The more the golden-scaled guards saw, the more terrified they became. Very soon, all the men in the carriage were pulled down, leaving only Li Shuer in the carriage alone. All the golden-scaled guards who blustered around earlier all fell silent, and no one dared to enter to capture the woman. The reason was because a shocking guess arose within their hearts. The shameless woman inside couldn't be the seventh princess, right? This guess was not unreasonable because all the guards who had been dragged down earlier were all without exception those who had been deployed to help seventh princess with some matters today. In the end, all of them had appeared in the carriage, except for the seventh princess, whose whereabouts were unknown. Without a need to think further, the woman in the carriage had a 90% chance that it was her. But how could this be? Seventh princess usually looked natural and unrestrained, unless she was such a shameless and wanton woman deep down in her bones. She had dared to commit such audacity within the city. The golden-scaled guards looked at each other in dismay, not knowing what to do next. Huang Yueli hid under a big tree at a distance not far away. When she saw this scenario, her mouth twitched disdainfully. These golden-scaled guards, normally they are so haughty and overbearing, why did they become so terrified at this moment? Such a huge letdown. Let me give them a hand. She hooked a small stone under the tree and kicked it. Along the direction of the wind, the stone flew towards the carriage and happened to fall in between the wheel. With a thump, the carriage lost its balance instantly and fell flat towards the direction of the royal palace. As for Li Shuer, who curled up in the carriage, giving a screech, she rolled out from the carriage and rolled for quite a distance before falling right in front of the golden-scaled guards. The golden-scaled guards looked carefully and all were shocked out of their lives. The woman, in front of their eyes, was totally naked. Her figure was shapely, giving rise to wild and fanciful thoughts. Even though the golden-scaled guards knew she could possibly be the seventh princess, but they were unable to control their line of visions and ogled several glances at her. Those lewd glances almost drove Li Shuer to death. The golden-scaled guard's vision fell onto her face, and at this moment, everyone was stunned. Seventh princess, Li Shuer was an outstanding beauty, but this woman in front of their eyes had her face filled with bumpy bruises, her face was swollen like a pig head. Was she really the seventh princess? Li Shuer screeched. What are you looking at? Do you believe that this princess will gorge out your eyes? Quickly remove your clothes and give it to me. This time, her voice was loud and clear and allowed the golden-scaled guard to confirm that this indeed was the seventh princess. One of them hurriedly removed his outer jacket and threw it towards Li Shuer. The rest of them surrounded her, back-facing in a circle to block out the views from the other people so that she could put on the clothes in the human circle. There were some who observed the surroundings and immediately went to clear the scene and chase away those bystanders who were there to watch the bustling scene. Alas, these series of actions came too late, because around the doors of the palace, there were several ministers and influential officials moving around. They had already seen this scenario with their own eyes and were gesticulating, even guessed that the naked woman who had just rolled out from the carriage was the emperor's beloved seventh princess. Some palace maids and eunuchs happened to pass by this route, and when they saw such a scenario, they hurriedly entered the palace to report to the emperor. Not long after, the palace door opened and the emperor and empress personally rushed over. You can also listen on. At this moment, Li Shuer had yet to put on the clothes properly. Due to the fact that both her hands could not move and she could not possibly ask the golden-scaled guards to put it on for her, so she could only slowly nudge herself, attempting to shift the clothes onto her body. But this action proved to be too difficult, as it would, time to time, hurt her hand, causing waves of extreme pain. Besides that, the effect of the estrus pill had not fully subsided as heat waves continued to rise, causing her to give out several moaning sounds. The surrounding golden-scaled guards tried hard to endure. If they had not known that the woman behind was a golden branch jade leaf person whom they could not afford to provoke, they would have lost it and made advances towards her long ago. When the emperor and empress arrived at the scenario, what they saw was this. Li Shuer was scantily dressed, stooping on the ground and constantly making groaning sounds. Her face was filled with wounds and it was difficult to make out her original looks. Empress gave a screech and quickly walked over. When she saw the birthmark on Li Shuer's upper shoulder, she momentarily cried out. Shuai, it's really Shuai. How did you become like this? What happened? My Shuai, mother. Li Shuai saw the empress and immediately all the grievances flowed upwards as her tears started to flow, unable to stop. Both mother and daughter started crying bitterly. However, in the eyes of the emperor, this scenario was far from touching. He only felt a deep sense of shame and a stomach full of fury. Enough, the both of you still dare to cry. The emperor howled angrily and strode over. Li Shuai seldom heard the emperor giving out such a fierce and stern tone and was shocked beyond words momentarily. Her tears stopped flowing as she mumbled, "Imperial father." However, before she could give an explanation, a piak slap fiercely landed on her face. "You still know you have an imperial father like me. How dare you openly do such a obscurity with so many guards in front of the palace doors? What's more, you openly roamed the streets in the city. The entire South Yu Kingdom's face had been thrown by you. How could I have such an indecent and immoral daughter like you?" Li Shuai was struck dumb. Due to her outstanding innate gift and her beauty, she had always been the apple of the emperor's eyes and had been pampered since young. She had never thought that one day, she would be slapped by her imperial father. However, before she could react, the emperor had already showered down hurls of abuse on her. That tone was obviously filled with disappointment to the extreme. Imperial father, listen to your daughter's explanation." The emperor gnashed his teeth as he hissed, "I don't want to hear your explanation. You already did such a shameful thing. What excuse do you have?" Li Shuai is now stripped of her princess status and demoted to a commoner. "Men, capture her and don't let her step out of the royal palace." When the empress heard these, she shuddered with cold sweat and rushed over to plead for mercy. "Your Majesty, your concubine's Shuai is not someone who doesn't know her morals. She must not have done this intentionally. Please have mercy, Your Majesty." When the emperor heard these words, instead of calming down, his fury raged even further. Unintentional, and she had already threw all the royal family's face away. If it was intentionally, wouldn't she already have forgotten about the entire South Yu Kingdom? If you dare to add on one more word, just wait for the imperial edict to be deposed. The emperor was extremely enraged. A legitimate princess hang out with so many guards in a carriage. What an atrocious gossip was this? You can also listen on. If this gossip was really leaked out, the entire South Yu Kingdom would thoroughly be reduced to other countries' laughingstock. No matter how much the emperor had usually pampered this daughter, now that such a matter had happened, he was completely unable to withstand this fact. From he and other people's point of view, Li Shuai's power was at defensive profound realm 3rd level and she also held a noble status of a princess. If this was something that she wasn't willing to, who would be able to force her to do so? At this moment, the emperor felt strongly that she had lost her sense of honor and shame. Li Shuai was stunned from the slap, and when she finally found her senses, she immediately cried bitterly to defend herself. "Imperial father, please listen to your daughter's explanation. This is really something that I didn't do willingly. Someone is out to harm me. It's by Ruoli from Valiant Martial Manor." When the emperor heard these words, instead of believing her, his fury amplified. "Enough. There's so many people out there, but you had to pick on by Ruoli. Who doesn't know that she's just at Chi Profound Realm 9 level, whereas you are a defensive Profound Realm practitioner? Yet you brought along so many guards. What were you trying to do? Can she outsmart you? I know that your royal brother's marriage arrangement was rejected by her, and he was also injured by Moying, so harboring this hatred in mind, you also wanted to take revenge on his behalf. But to speak without thinking, isn't your inclination just too evil?" The emperor just couldn't bring himself to believe her explanation. Ever since the last Peach Blossom banquet, he found out that Bai Ruoli had been bullied since young by the Marquis lady and insulted by Bai Ruo Chi. He had always felt that he'd done an injustice towards Bai Liu Feng, and that he had owed her too much. Moreover, ever since the crown prince was injured, he had always clamored about taking revenge on Li Moying and Huang Yueli, so the emperor had already kept vigilant on this. He had never expected that Li Shuai would go find trouble with Huang Yueli the minute she returned. Wasn't the motive abundantly clear? Now, Li Shuai even claimed that Huang Yueli had set her and the guards up. Li Moying was not around. As a first-degree realm practitioner, how was she able to deal with so many golden-scaled guards? How would the emperor ever think that Huang Yueli's potential had such a shocking breakthrough? Li Shuer was unable to find a convincing explanation to defend herself. She was unable to take it any longer, had a blackout and fainted on the spot. At a distance not far away, under a big tree, Huang Yueli secretly stretched her arms and spoke in a springy tone. "All right, the show is over, let's get on our way now." Little Phoenix reluctantly tugged at her collar, chirp, 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 chirp chirping non-stop. "Female devil, what's the hurry? Until now, I have yet to see what that lady in nude looks like. Let me watch a little long, just a little longer, otherwise, let's move away slightly further to take a clear look." Out. Huang Yueli couldn't stand it any further as she gave him a huge bump on the top of his head. "You brat, going astray at such a young age, is that something that you should be looking at?" "Woo, woo, woo." Little Phoenix shrunk his head back, not daring to speak his mind. However, in his heart, he kept thinking that this female devil had thought of such a sinister and vicious plot, but he just wanted to take another look and suffered domestic violence from her. This was practically double standard at its best. Humph, the next time she and Li Moying got intimate, he must open his eyes wide and look to his content. Huang Yueli swept a glance at him. Seeing that he leaned his head back, she guessed what was on his mind. She carried the little Phoenix and placed him back on her shoulder. "All right, stop wasting time. We still have pressing matters to see to." Chirp chirp. Pressing matters? Yes. Huang Yueli nodded. Brother Mo Yi had gone to the 1,000 Treasure Pavilion since morning and have yet to return. It's simply abnormal for someone like him. Something must have delayed him from coming back, or there could be an accident or something like that, otherwise he won't act in this way. Let's hurry over and take a look. You can also listen on. Huang Yueli brought along the little Phoenix and went straight to 1,000 Treasure Pavilion. 1,000 Treasure Pavilion's door was wide open, but there weren't any customers. Huang Yueli strode in with big steps and saw the entire lobby in huge mess. All the counters had been pushed over and various medicinal ingredients were scattered on the ground. Some locked cabinets were also smashed open. Signs of a fight were visibly shown on the ground. Besides that, all the employees of the 1,000 Treasure Pavilion were spotted having a black eye, as though they had just been attacked by someone. Yet in between these people, there wasn't any sign of Mo Yi or Manager Sunday. Huang Yueli frowned as she grabbed an employee and asked, "Where is Manager Sun? How about Mo Yi? Where have they gone to?" The employee was holding on to his swollen face while groaning in pain, but as he lifted his head, a delicate and attractive face came into his sight. A hint of joy shone in his eyes. He had immediately recognized that she was the valiant Marshal Manner's third miss, and was also their lady boss. "Third miss, you're here. That's great, we're saved. Manager Sun is inside calculating what we have left in our reserve. The Crown Prince had led his men here, looting and snatching items in our shop, causing us to suffer from huge losses. Third miss, you're looking for him? Need your humble servant to ask Manager Sun out?" Huang Yueli shook her head and replied, "Never mind, let him slowly calculate the damages. How about Mo Yi?" "Mo Yi?" The employee was dumbfounded for a moment before he suddenly realized, "You're referring to the tall and incredible expert? He's simply too powerful. Earlier when the few of us were almost beaten to death by the golden-scaled guards, but when Sir Mo Yi rushed here, he easily took care of all of them. Even the Crown Prince was not able to take even one strike from him." Huang Yueli was totally not surprised by his words. Mo Yi was a 5th-degree realm practitioner, higher than Crown Prince and the rest by a total of 3 realms. To say that he swept all obstacles away at one go was not an exaggeration, even one finger of his could squash them all. "Where did he go to after he defeated the Crown Prince?" The employee replied, "This, your humble servant is not sure. But when the Crown Prince plundered a lot of valuable items from our shop, and when he escaped, he brought it all along. Sir Mo Yi seemed very angry, and from the looks of it, it was possible that he had chased after the Crown Prince to get the valuables back." Huang Yueli frowned, seemingly unable to understanding his motive. Even if Mo Yi were to chase after the Crown Prince, but in order to get the items back, it shouldn't be something effortless, so why would he waste so much time? Huang Yueli found another employee and his answer was similar to the first. She hesitated for a moment and decided to proceed outside to take a look. Luckily, the Crown Prince had led a large group of people running wildly on the streets. That scenario had left quite a deep impression on others. Huang Yueli inquired someone by the roadside and very quickly, she located the route which the Crown Prince had escaped in. She followed the pathway, but when she saw the destination, she was slightly surprised as she frowned. The place that they had gone to was actually the royal treasury. She had been to this royal treasure previously. The last time was to obtain the flame cloud pearl from the treasury, so that she could advance in her level. At that time, she had been pursued by the imperial tutor for several miles, escaping all the way to the royal palace before she managed to shake him off. To think that the Crown Prince had brought his men to escape to this place. Could it be that Mo Yi had also followed them to this place? As suspicions started to form in Huang Yueli's mind, her speed started to decrease by quite a bit. You can also listen on. From her previous experience, Huang Yueli was very sure that the royal treasury was filled with golden-scaled guards and other experts and would be heavily guarded. It would be best to proceed carefully if she didn't want to make a huge commotion and got besieged. Huang Yueli followed the previous pathway that she had taken before and found the air vent that she had entered the previous time. She hid behind the opening and secretly spied on the situation, following which she raised her brow in surprise. Originally, there were 2 guards keeping watch under the air vent, and she was considering on how she could knock them unconscious without making a commotion. Who would know that today there wasn't anyone at all? Although surprised, she didn't hesitate, and with the tip of her toes, she leapt upwards onto the ledge of the wall and made her way into the little ventilator hole. She did not meet with any obstructions throughout the entire process and successfully infiltrated into the inner section. Stop him, quick, stop him. Huang Yueli had just jumped down from the wall when she heard a gust of flustered and exasperated yelling, as well as several mechanisms being activated. She got a shock as she thought she had fallen into some sort of trap. Her eyes widened after observing closely. The result was, what the? Mo Yi is really here. Mo Yi was indeed trapped within the royal treasury, and he had to face being besieged by several experts alone, and among those included the imperial tutor and another 4th-degree realm practitioner who had always been guarding the royal treasury. Besides them, there were several golden-scaled guards commanders who were currently in the 3rd-degree realm. If it was purely based on battle power alone, even though the imperial tutor and the rest had an advantage in terms of manpower, but with that alone to defeat Mo Yi, who was both an experienced and skilled 5th-degree realm expert, seemed like an impossible task. However, they still had the upper hand. In the royal treasury, various mechanisms were installed to protect the treasures, and it was important to take precaution on every single step, otherwise it might end up in fatal disaster. Mo Yi was not familiar to these mechanisms, and he knew nothing about the topography of the royal treasury. On one end, the imperial tutor and others were attacking him with all their might, while on the other hand, they were activating the mechanisms in the royal treasury. This had caused various obstacles to Mo Yi. Although Mo Yi's power was much stronger than them on an entire level, but the mechanisms were extremely powerful and was caught unprepared several times. When this had dragged on, he gradually found it hard to deal with and subsequently fell into a disadvantage. The imperial tutor's face expressed boundless pleasure. Everyone hold on, this deceitful thief is not going to hold on much longer. Everyone listen to my commands. Let's quickly take him down and hand him over to the Crown Prince. Crown Prince will definitely reward you handsomely. All those present were under the Crown Prince's personal doctrine, hence all of them had the same thoughts in mind and hastened the rhythm of their attacks. Huang Yueli blinked her eyes, and after observing for a short while, she came to an understanding. It looked like while the Crown Prince was escaping, he had brought along the treasures and lured Mo Yi to the inside of the royal treasury. On one hand, it was to borrow the powers of the mechanisms and guards to capture Mo Yi, while on the other hand, there was a malicious plot brewing. Mo Yi was Li Moying's bodyguard, and if he were caught intruding into the royal treasury with the intention to steal, it would definitely affect Li Moying's reputation. In this way, Crown Prince could successfully discredit Li Moying and smear his reputation, while regaining fame for himself. Besides that, if Crown Prince were to take Mo Yi away from her, Li Shuer would be able to grab this opportunity to find trouble with Huang Yueli at the valiant martial manner. You can also listen on. In the eyes of the Crown Prince and 7th Princess, although Huang Yueli had a good innate skill, but her age was just too young and her cultivation was only at the 1st degree realm. If it hadn't been for Li Moying, she was not even be fit to be an opponent for any one of them. As long as they removed the guard that Li Moying had left by her side, she would become a helpless little sheep waiting for slaughter. They had not preempted that Huang Yueli was actually able to use her own power to take care of Li Shuer and those men whom she had brought along, and even gave them a good thrashing. Now, she had even rushed to the royal treasury in time. With an unexpected variable like her, the plan that Crown Prince had plotted to capture Mo Yi alive was not possible to materialize. This was because, in a place filled with mechanisms was exactly Huang Yueli's home field. Even if the Crown Prince's mechanisms were to be counted fully, to pick such a location was akin to using a stone and crush his own feet. In the middle of the treasury, Mo Yi's disadvantage was becoming more and more obvious. On seeing that his actions were gradually becoming slower, the imperial tutor's wrinkle-ridden face let out a smile as he shouted, "Quick, surround him everyone, let's all." Before he could finish his words, they heard a dull noise reverberating from the treasury. Imperial tutor scowled as he shouted, "Didn't I say this already? Don't activate the mechanisms without my orders, have you all heard?" This ere as he was speaking, his eyes suddenly grew wider as his entire face expressed shock. A huge rumble sound blared, and unknowingly the largest mechanism in the royal treasury was activated as huge rocks dropped down from their head as though it was hailstone. The only difference was the rocks were larger than the hailstones and had a diameter of at least 1 meter. If one were to be struck by it, one would definitely end up wounded or dead. Imperial tutor hastily avoided it as his heart was flustered by a peal of astonishment and panic. The reason was because the only way to activate this largest mechanism was only known to him and the other 4th degree realm expert who was responsible for guarding the royal treasury. But now that both of them were here, who was it that had activated the mechanism? Unless there was a traitor within the royal treasury who had secretly learnt how to activate the mechanism? But wasn't this just impossible? In order to activate such a powerfully large mechanism, it would require a lot of strength, and without the power of the 4th degree realm practitioner, even if one knew the method, one would not have enough strength to activate it. But what the imperial tutor didn't know was to use brute force to activate the mechanism was actually the last resort. This method would only be used by those who had no idea whatsoever about mechanisms and had no choice but to choose such a stupid method. However, to an armament master like Huang Yueli, to activate such a low-level mechanism was a simple task to undertake. Not only did she activate the large hailstone mechanism, she also made some minor adjustments to the mechanism itself. This resulted in the descent of hailstones dropping more on the imperial tutor and others' heads, concentrated to the extent of impossibility. As for Mo Yi's side, there were only a few pieces of hailstone and he just had to slightly adjust his position and would be able to avoid it easily. A glint of surprise flashed past Mo Yi's eyes as he had never expected that the situation would take such a huge unexpected turn. Just as he realized that he was about to be defeated, and since he didn't want to fall into the evil claws of the imperial tutor to become a tool against his master, he had already made the worst decision of perishing together with them. Who knew that just as he was about to find the best opportunity to strike, this unexpected change happened. You can also listen on. Since the current situation was advantageous to him, with Mo Yi's abundant experience in battle, he naturally would not miss such a wonderful opportunity. He immediately worked up his cultivation method and, displaying his profound skill, the flexible sword in his hands waltzed out streams of blinding lightning-like sword glimmer. His profound energy was of spectacular significance as his attacks were directed towards the imperial tutor and the others. Imperial tutor and the rest were using all their might to avoid the densely falling hailstones, and next up was a series of full-strength attacks from a 5th degree realm practitioner. What was more fraudulent was they would also suffer sneak attacks from Huang Yueli time to time. Under 3 simultaneous avenues, they were unable to ward off blows. Very soon, all of their meridians on their hands and feet were severed by Mo Yi and they fell onto the floor, unable to get up. And just at the instance that they had fallen, the hailstones that had continuously been dropping on their heads suddenly stopped. Upon seeing this situation, the heartbeats of the imperial tutor and others almost came to a halt. Did it needed to be so deceptive? Who among them didn't grew eyes and switched on the mechanism? Why was it such a coincidence? And it had to stop right now. If it had stopped a quarter of an hour earlier, they would not have been checkmated one after one. At the same time, their hearts were annoyed beyond words. If they had known earlier and just persevered just a little longer, if they could persevere just a quarter of an hour more, to avoid a few more strikes and the hailstones would have stopped. By then, they would be able to turn defeat into victory. Sigh, why didn't they just persevere just a little more earlier? However, what they didn't knew was the stopping of the hailstones was actually controlled by Huang Yueli in the background, and no matter how long more they had persevered, as long as they did not fall, the falling hailstones would naturally not stop. After Mo Yi had defeated all the enemies, he hurriedly turned around to search for the person who had been aiding him in secret. Huang Yueli slowly walked out from a corner, bearing a faint smile on her face. "Third miss. It's you." Mo Yi hastily bowed. Imperial Tutor's eyes super wide as he stared daggers at her. By Ruoli?" Huang Yueli nodded towards Mo Yi to acknowledge his greeting and turned her gaze towards the Imperial Tutor as her lips surfaced a frosty smile. "Imperial Tutor, how have you been? Ever since we last met at the Peach Blossom Banquet, I thought that we would never cross paths ever again. After all, I am a 6th grade talent and you are just a passe old man who's almost dying, so we're not on the same route. God knows, we're played around by the will of heavens that we have crossed paths so soon again, so this is quite a surprise." Imperial Tutor was choked by her words that his entire face turned red with fury and embarrassment. This wretched lass, every single time she opened her mouth, it would spill out words which would infuriate one to spit blood out, and to make it worse, one was not able to rebut whatever she had said. The reason was because every word she had said was the truth, and only because it was the truth, it was unbearable, as though stepping down hard on others' open wound. Saying that he was a passe old man and they were not on the same route. Although the words were unpleasant to hear, but the Imperial Tutor had indeed, during recent times, felt that he would not be able to live much longer. As for Huang Yueli, she had just revealed her outstanding talent. Like the sun in midday, sooner or later she would gradually ascend to become a shining star. They were indeed incomparable. The Imperial Tutor gasped a couple of breaths before he forcefully opened his mouth. You wretched lass who doesn't know how to show your respects to your seniors, I am the Imperial Tutor and even the Emperor have to show respect to me. What's more, when your father was still in the South Yu Kingdom, he would greet me as his senior. Is this how you talk to me? You can also listen on." The sides of Huang Yueli's mouth curled upwards slightly as her eyes flashed obvious signs of ridicule. "My father greeted you as a senior was to respect your age, thinking that you are an elderly worth respecting. My father had always been an upright person, but how would we ever expect that in this whole wide world, there's such a person who isn't worthy of respect? As for me," she paused momentarily and under the embittered gaze of the Imperial Tutor, she unhurriedly opened her mouth. "You're just my guard's defeated opponent and prisoner. Frankly speaking, you're worse than the servants under me, so why should I bother to show respect to you? Have I got nothing better to do?" The Imperial Tutor almost fainted when he heard these words. This wretched lass actually compared him with the servants. He was a powerful 4th-degree realm practitioner and even the Emperor had to treat him with respect as his status was utmost valuable. "You're good, by Ruoli. With such arrogance, sooner or later you will suffer retribution, and it will be soon. Let me tell you, 7th Princess is already back in the kingdom and she's not an ordinary girl. If you were to fall into the hands of the 7th Princess," the Imperial Tutor had originally wanted to scare her, but in the middle of speaking, he suddenly stopped. He suddenly remembered that he had been sent to the royal treasury to hold back Mo Yi so that it would be more convenient for 7th Princess to deal with Huang Yueli. But why was Huang Yueli able to appear here now? Shouldn't she still be at the Valiant Martial Manor, being hung up to be tortured by the 7th Princess and thrown into the darkest and dirtiest water prison? Why did she appear in the royal treasury? And her dressing looked tidy and her complexion was rosy, looking much prettier than before. Her condition couldn't be better. In what way did she look like she was being given corrective punishment? Could it be that this wretched lass had heard news of the 7th Princess going over to find trouble with her, so she had ran away? Or had something happened to the seventh princess, made adjustments, and had yet to inform them of the changes in her plan? Imperial Tutor was still puzzled after much thought. Instead, Huang Yueli smiled and said, Imperial Tutor, you were trying to say that Li Shuer wanted to capture me to teach me a lesson, right? But it is just too unfortunate. Your seventh princess had indeed gone to my place, but in the middle of her journey. She was burning with desire, took off all her clothes and did a striptease and hugged her own guards while doing illicit stuff. TSK, everyone in the entire royal palace would had already heard of this. What? Imperial Tutor gave a shocking expression, retorting unbelievably, what rubbish are you sprouting? Why would the seventh princess do such a thing? Do you think I would believe this? Huang Yueli didn't think much of it and shrugged her shoulders. Believe it or not, it doesn't matter to me. Anyway, the person who is embarrassed is not me. What's more, the minute you leave the royal treasury and head back to the palace, you'd naturally find out about everything. Saying that, she suddenly stopped, as though she had remembered something else. Oh, that's right. I almost forgot about this. If you want to return to the palace, you must be able to retain your life in order to do so. Otherwise, you'd probably never find out for the rest of your life on what had actually happened to Li Shuer. What do you want to do to me? If you were to proceed at random and offend me, the emperor would definitely not let you off easily. Huang Yueli laughed. Imperial Tutor, you've lived like a prince for too long a time that your brain isn't really working. The emperor protects you naturally is because your power is strong and can bless the entire South Yu kingdom. But if I can deal with you, naturally it means that my power is stronger than you. Weighing the pros and cons, whose side would the emperor stand on? You can also listen on. Imperial Tutor was stifled till he turned silent. Because everything that Huang Yueli had mentioned was correct. In Soaring Heaven's continent where martial skills was absolute, whoever held more power, whoever would be justified and whose fists were harder would represent truth. If Huang Yueli were to kill him, it would mean that she was much stronger. Who would, for a dead person, go against a much stronger living being? Huang Yueli looked at his wrinkled pale face and chillingly said, at your age, you're still so naive. Acting like a little boy. Are you here to perform a comedy? Another wave of melancholy rushed up with Imperial Tutor and narrowly bringing up any rage. What was this? She actually said he was innocent. And yet he had really been innocent for that one moment. Imperial Tutor gritted his teeth as he hissed, today you're lucky, but you want to kill me. Your thinking is too wishful. I still have a life-saving trump card. If you really wish to take a risk out of desperation, then don't blame me for perishing along with you. A life-saving trump card? That's good. By then don't be stingy and use it all. But that is if you still have the opportunity to live past today. Huang Yueli clapped her hands and instructed to Mo Yi, who was standing behind, Brother Mo Yi, I'd like to trouble you to drag these dregs to the 5th floor. Mo Yi responded yes and immediately went forward. He didn't had that much patience compared to those servants at the valiant Martial Manor, willing to drag one by one nicely along. As a 5th-degree realm expert, doing these heavy manual work was like using a sledgehammer to crack a nut. If it wasn't his future mistress's instructions, he wouldn't even bother. Once he really did it, it was naturally plain brutal. He simply threw these people entirely into a pile and stacked them up one by one. After they have been stacked together, he found a rope and tied them all together. Among those who had surrounded Mo Yi were 3rd-degree realm experts and above. Not just the Imperial Tutor, the rest of them were all famed experts around the South Yu kingdom and held some sort of status within the kingdom, and were the subject of flattery of others. Who would knew that once they had fallen into Mo Yi's hands, they were thrown here and there, even worse than a sack. Imperial Tutor was howling himself hoarse in the entire process. You brat, you dared to treat me like this. What do you think you're doing? I will never let you off easily. Let me go, I tell you. Mo Yi had struck their meridians and they were completely unable to move, so all they could do was to bark some sounds out. He naturally would not bother about them and very quickly, he had tied them into the shape of a rice dumpling. After which, he dragged them along effortlessly and dragged all of them upstairs at one go. The fifth floor was the Royal Treasury's treasure pavilion, and everything inside were extremely valuable treasures. When Huang Yueli came previously, she had intentionally ransacked the entire treasure pavilion one round and had already familiarized herself with all the surrounding mechanisms at the back of her palm. She commanded Mo Yi to drag that lump of rice dumpling to one wall. "All right, just leave them there will do. Don't ever step on that brick in front of that place. Otherwise when it activates the mechanism, even I will find it difficult to save you." Mo Yi quickly withdrew his foot, which had almost overstepped the line, and carefully put the people down. Following that, he returned to Huang Yueli's side as he bowed. "Third miss, what should we do next? Please give me your orders." This Huang Yueli blinked her eyes as that pair of splendidly brilliant big eyes suddenly sparkled, looking extremely delicate and cute. But those who knew her had already secretly gave a chilling shudder. You can also listen on. Imperial Tutor had not understood her well and didn't knew that danger was lurking nearby as he continued to scream and shout in an attempt to threaten Huang Yueli. Mo Yi had begun to grieve silently for the Imperial Tutor in his heart. Huang Yueli thought for a moment and suddenly her eyes shone brightly as she said, "That's right, I recalled. As I was saying, someone seems to be missing here, so it's the Crown Prince. Today's plot was schemed by him single-handedly and in the end, he escaped alone. Where on earth would you find such a good deal?" Mo Yi responded, "What is Third Miss planning to do?" Huang Yueli replied, "Help me capture Li Moying here, I have my own plans." When Mo Yi heard what Huang Yueli said, he didn't move out immediately. Instead he hesitated for a moment and replied, "Third Miss, this isn't too good an idea. These fellows here are all 3rd and 4th degree realm practitioners. Although I have already struck their meridians, but if anything were to happen and you being here alone, it would be very dangerous." Huang Yueli laughed and said, "No issue, don't worry about it. Such a small matter, I'm still able to handle it myself." However, Mo Yi didn't move an inch. He naturally knew that this third miss had heaven-defying tricks up her sleeves and was extremely awesome, but he was already worried that she might belittle her enemy and cause a mishap because of that. What's more, since the practitioners here are much higher than her level by several realms, if anyone had any secret method to remove the restriction, then Huang Yueli would not be able to handle it. Huang Yueli looked at his troubled expression and smiled while shaking her head. "Aya, brother Mo Yi, you actually don't believe in me. All right, I'll just clamp them up together." Clamp them up together? Mo Yi was filled with bewilderment. What did that mean? The very next moment, his mouth turned into an O shape. Huang Yueli outstretched her hand and pressed on the wall. Hearing a bam sound, the two huge metal rows of teeth on the two sides of the wall swung ferociously towards the middle to join together, like a rat trap, and clamped those people right in the middle. Ouch! So painful. The clamp was originally very tight and was meant for one person only, but now that it was clamping so many people at one time, all of them were squeezed into a bundle, only feeling that their ribs were almost being smashed into pieces, and all of them began groaning one after another. A few sweat beads started to fall from Mo Yi's forehead. No wonder Third Miss warned him not to step over that piece of brick, so there was such a sinister mechanism hidden. Just a little bit more, he would have been like a street rat and the person who was clipped there would have been him, but looking at the current situation, he was relieved. In this heavily mechanized treasury, such a high-level armament master like Huang Yueli would probably be much safer than a 5th-degree realm practitioner like him, so he really didn't need to worry much for her. Mo Yi bumped his fist towards Huang Yueli as a form of respect, turned and left towards the East Palace wing to capture the Crown Prince. Huang Yueli had nothing to do since she was all alone in the royal treasury. She took a tour on the 5th floor of the treasure pavilion and removed all the treasures kept in several rooms and kept it into her own realm ring. As she was keeping it, she discontentedly criticized, "Sign, this South Yu kingdom is really poor. When I came the last round, there were several not bad-looking treasures, but after those had been removed, there's no additional new pieces and what's left are just these junk." Huang Yueli mumbled her complaints in a whisper and her tone was not high, but in the imperial tutor's ears, it made his heart tremble tremendously. So the thief who had stolen away a huge amount of treasures in the royal treasury just over a month ago, was you. You can also listen on. Huang Yueli was all smiles as she replied, "Yes, wasn't it me? Imperial tutor, your age is really catching up. Your response is really retarded, only now did you realize this. But, you're only in a first-degree realm. How is it possible?" Imperial tutor was agape and tongue-tied as his eyes filled with shock, and more shock. At that time, Huang Yueli was heavily locked down by the golden-scaled guards, and yet she was able to escape from the royal treasury. Moreover, Imperial tutor had followed behind her for quite a long distance, but in the end he was not even able to touch a single strand of her hair. Instead she made a fool out of him. Before that day, Imperial tutor had never been in such a wretched situation for a very long time, so he bore a grudge against the thief ever since, but no matter what, he was not able to witch that person out. Now that he found out about the truth, the Imperial tutor almost wanted to shed tears. How was he, being made a fool by a lass who was in the first-degree realm, lass, which was such a far distance from him? Huang Yueli smiling replied, "I have yet to thank you. If it hadn't been for Imperial tutor's leniency, it would not have been that easy for me to get the treasures out from the royal treasury." Imperial tutor was speechless. In what way was he lenient? And he was not able to catch her at all. As Huang Yueli was saying all these, her hands didn't slow down and continued to empty various treasures from their shelves and kept it all within her realm. The previous time, she was on a tight schedule and was afraid of getting discovered by others, so she only took the most valuable items. But today, since she had no misgivings and had completely fallen out with the Imperial tutor and others, why would she need to conceal the whole story? There were quite a number of treasures which she honestly did not value, but no matter how small a mosquito was, it was still a piece of meat. Even though she don't value it, it wouldn't mean that other people would not value it. If she could auction it off at an auction house, perhaps those were able to exchange for some spirit stones or spirit jades. Imperial tutor looked at Huang Yueli's well-trained and speedy actions, and his brows creased as he let out an extremely painful expression. All these treasures were accumulated bit by bit over the years, and some had been personally procured by himself, leading the golden-scaled guards to dangerous grounds, and now, it was all being swept into the waste pouch of lass that he hated deeply. By Ruoli, aren't you full of guts? Stop, quickly stop now. Huang Yueli didn't bother about him and continued to sweep all the treasures cleanly on the 5th floor before running downstairs to continue on her collection. Imperial tutor gritted his teeth for half a day, and as time ran past, he realized that something was not right. The area of the treasury was only so big, and the treasures kept within were naturally not few. Some of the treasures were rather large pieces, and yet Huang Yueli had kept one piece after another into her space, as if it was not full at all. How much was her realm ring able to contain? And there was something more shocking. That was although she had been running to and fro among the different floors, and had swept every single shelf cleanly as though she was packing her own home storage room. Heaven knows, there were numerous mechanisms in every single room of the 5th floor, and various traps were also set up on the other floors, but not only had Huang Yueli not breached a single one of them, she also easily got hold of everything. A huge tidal wave arose in Imperial tutor's heart. Even for himself, even if he held the treasury's map in his hands, he would still need to be extremely careful, afraid that once he loses caution, his life would be buried within this place. But this lass, how did she do it? Huang Yueli spent just over 2 hours and had already finished collecting about 70 to 80% of the 4th floor's treasures. You can also listen on. Just at this moment, Mo Yi's figure was like a gust of wind and engulfed himself into the royal treasury. In Mo Yi's hands was a huge gunnysack, and on the opening of the gunnysack was a straw rope tightly sealing it. The gunnysack bobbed up and down in all sorts of directions, and there was a faint noise coming from it. It was obvious that something alive was in it. Mo Yi came before Huang Yueli and bowed to show his respect. "Third miss, the thing that you wanted, your subordinate has already brought it. Do you want to check the item?" Huang Yueli nodded and said, "Ian, let's take a look at it." Mo Yi opened the sack and shook it. Tumbling, a figure of a person rolled out, and it rolled for several rounds on the ground before it finally came to a halt, and that person was the Crown Prince. Li Moying's expression seemed a little dazed, as though he wasn't sure where he was at, as he blankly looked to his left and right for several moments. Huang Yueli immediately understood what had happened. She guessed that Mo Yi didn't officially cross hands with Li Moying and just directly gunny-sacked him from behind, and just brought him here after sacking him up. She almost laughed out loud because Mo Yi actually had a gift for playing tricks on people. This should be because he had followed Li Moying around for too long, so one takes on the color of one's company. Crown Prince absently turned his head around, and the first sight that falls into his eyes was the bundled-up Imperial tutor and others. His eyes opened wide in astonishment. "Master, why are you here? What happened to all of you?" When Imperial tutor saw Crown Prince, his face was filled with sorrow and melancholy. "Moying, why are you so careless? You really got captured by that damned lass. Sigh, what should we do now?" "What damned lass? Master, why are all of you trapped in that mechanism? I shall think of a way to release all of you. Ari, don't come over, be careful of falling into Unbearably, that damned lass's tricks. Your master was careless, so I fell into her trickery." Unbearably? When Li Moying heard her name, he turned his head and his sight fell onto Huang Yueli's face as he gave a shriek. "Unbearably, what are you doing here?" Huang Yueli had been watching this show for some time and replied smilingly, "Crown Prince, long time no see. The last time we met, I recall your meridians were severed totally and I was still worried for you, that you might become a disabled person. To think that you're actually all right and there's no impairments to your movements, this is really a surprise. What kind of miracle medication did you take?" Crown Prince was originally slightly dazed, but when he heard her words, his expression grew uglier by the minute as the veins on his forehead started to pop out. This was called touching one's tender spot. Li Moying's biggest insult throughout his entire life was to have his meridians severed in front of everyone at the Peach Blossom banquet, and he almost became a disabled person. It was only until a few days ago when Li Shuai returned and gave him a 5th-grade pill, which allowed him to stand up again. However, even till now, his power had yet to completely recover. Li Moying clenched and gritted his teeth as he stared at Huang Yueli and replied viciously, "Unbearably, all these are done by you and that bastard Li Moying. You dared to do such a thing like this to me. Hey, haven't you thought that I would take revenge? You came at the right timing. I thought you were scared and had hidden yourself. Now that you're here in front of me to look for death, don't blame me for dealing with you." A chilly smile formed on Huang Yueli's lips. What Crown Prince had said really scared me so much. "I'm so scared. I wonder how are you intending to deal with me?" You can also listen on. The gaze in Li Moying's eyes seemed extremely gloomy and chilling. "Since you want to know, then I shall tell you. Doesn't Li Moying like you and want to make you his royal consort? If he had knew that when he left South Yu Kingdom and you had been sold to the largest brothel in South Yu Kingdom to receive guests and made him wear 10,000 green hats, I wonder if he would die from an excess of anger." Huang Yueli's smile gradually disappeared as she replied frostily, "Crown Prince, that's a really malicious method. Too bad, he was just dreaming and had no sight at all. He had already been gunny-sacked and brought to her, and without thinking of the consequence, thinking of begging her to spare him, instead he was daydreaming of such a dream." Li Moying saw her stiff face and thought she was frightened and became even more complacent. "But then again, you have such delicate skin and you seem to become prettier by the day. I'm one who knows how to cherish beautiful woman, so if you were to serve thousands of man by the pillow, it's really a waste of good stuff. If you wish to follow me instead, I can still let you off." Huang Yueli sneered coldly, "You really deserve to be called the Crown Prince. Your dream is really beautiful, but you're simply looking for death. I had thought that since you could finally get down from the bed, you'd cherish your life even more, but I've never thought that you are still looking for death. How can I not grant you that wish?" Li Moying's eyes turned wide and thought that he had heard wrongly. "What did you say? You say I am looking for death? Shouldn't this lass be weeping bitter tears and begging for mercy? Without Li Moying as her backing, how would this lass still dare to go against him? Even if Li Moying had left his powerful guard behind, but he was the nation's crown prince. Just a normal guard, would he dare to strike against the crown prince? He had wanted to capture Huang Yueli to warm up his bed, and she thought that she could reject it. As Li Moying thought of these and wanted to continue scaring her, it would be best if she was scared out of her wits and automatically offer herself to him. In this way, It would be the best way to insult Li Moying. But just as his face surfaced a glint of complacent smile, he felt a wave of profound energy coming towards him. This profound energy was pure and ferocious, and its attack power was abnormally strong. Li Moying sensed danger and quickly moved to avoid it. However, he was still too late. The profound energy had surrounded him in all directions, and no matter where he ran to, he was unable to hide from it. Li Moying felt an intense pain from his chest, and when he lowered his head, he saw a delicate fair fist smashing on his chest. And right in front of him was that young lady whose little face was stiff like a rock. It was Huang Yueli. How could that be? Just as this thought flashed across his mind, at the same moment, he was already flying out and heavily falling onto the ground. Li Moying opened his mouth and had barely spoke a word when a mouthful of blood rushed up and sprayed out. Following that, a few pieces of teeth also dropped onto the ground. His expression changed precipitously, and when he wanted to climb up, he found himself unable to stand. His 4 limbs emitted tremors of intense pain as though it had been broken. Just as he was struggling non-stop, Huang Yueli had step by step, slowly walked to his side. Li Moying clenched his teeth and looking upwards, he raised his chin to look at the young lady. Using such a position to look at someone was a first time for Li Moying. He just realized that he was prostrating on the ground, and the feeling that he felt from the other party's sight was actually so lowly and insignificant, as though he was even less worthy than a speck of dust. And the Huang Yueli now indeed looked like she was high and almighty. You can also listen on. By Ruoli. It's you. Crown Prince spat out another mouthful of blood, but he still blurted out these words vaguely. He had seen Huang Yueli struck earlier and had felt for himself that huge resistance which he was able to go against, but it was until the minute he had fell heavily injured on the ground, did he finally realize that he was unable to react at all. It was simply unbelievable. Absolutely an impossible thing to have happened. If it wasn't for the bouts of pain reverberating from his body which made him believe that he was still conscious, Crown Prince would have definitely thought that he was still in dreamland, having a nightmare. He was a defensive profound realm 7-stage practitioner. As for Huang Yueli, she was only in Qi profound realm 9 stage. With such a huge difference of realm between the two of them, it was practically impossible to bypass ranks and challenge him. No matter how abnormal Huang Yueli's innate gift was, even if she had done a breakthrough recently, she should also be in defensive profound realm 1st stage. How was it possible that she had the power to battle against him? But fact had proven itself, she had not battled him, but had crushed him. He could not even withstand one stance from Huang Yueli, and he had already been injured to this stage. How was that possible? Crown Prince was still puzzled after much thought. Huang Yueli had started to speak in a frosty tone. Want me to follow you? The man I want must be the strongest, undefeatable and peerless expert. As for you, have you even taken a look at your own reflection to see if you're worthy? Upon hearing that, Li Moying couldn't help but spat out another mouthful of blood. He had never been despised by any woman in his entire lifetime, but unfortunately, the person who had been beaten to the ground by Huang Yueli was him. It was entirely justified when Huang Yueli said he wasn't worthy. Huang Yueli looked at how angry Li Moying had gotten, to the point of almost fainting, and a chilling smile appeared slightly. Her wish had never changed since 30 years ago, and that person in her heart had long become soaring heaven's continent's #1 expert. Just a small character like Crown Prince, and he expected her to be his concubine? Mo Yi was listening by the side, and his mouth had long agape and tongue-tied. Third Miss had really dared to claim. Could she be telling the truth? Only marry the strongest, undefeatable and peerless expert. If his master were to hear these, he wondered what he would think. Although his master had an incredible innate gift, but he was still after all pretty young. For now, the distance between him and the #1 expert spot was still rather far apart. Brother Mo Yi, what are you thinking about? Huang Yueli's calling woke Mo Yi from his trance. He hurriedly recovered his sense as he spoke respectfully. My apologies, Third Miss. Your subordinate had been absent-minded. Is there anything you need me to do? Huang Yueli threw a glance at Li Moying and smilingly said, Crown Prince had been bedridden for too long, so when he stood up, his brain couldn't cope. As an heir apparent to the throne, how can he be so muddle-headed? Why not we give him a helping hand and let him continue to lie in bed for a while more? Yes. Mo Yi was stunned for a moment before he managed to react. Huang Yueli had intended to sever Li Moying's meridians again. Unfortunately, although her battle skills were outstanding and could defeat Li Moying easily, but she was after all just in second-degree realm. She was unable to be like Li Moying to achieve the effect of severing the meridians of Li Moying. Only experts who were several realms higher could do that. So this dirty and strenuous work had not fallen onto Mo Yi again. Mo Yi resignedly walked over and squatted down beside Li Moying. As he pressed against Li Moying's arm, he gradually imbued his profound energy. Not sure if it was due to his weak ability or was it done intentionally, when the process of severing the meridians was done by Mo Yi, it was done at a snail-pace speed. You can also listen on. Following each movement made by Mo Yi, Li Moying let out several blood-curdling screeches. When Li Moying had severed his meridians previously, it was done instantaneously. But when Mo Yi did it this round, it was done by crushing each meridian one by one, and the entire process was extremely long. Li Moying could distinctly felt the pain from every single inch of his meridian being crushed. This type of pain seemed to come deeply from the soul, causing him totally unable to suppress his volume. By Ruoli. You're looking for death, you. You dare to do this to me. I will not let you off. Huang Yueli heard his clamoring, but there wasn't a trace of fear on her face. Instead it was filled with a relaxed smile. Look at what you're saying, since Crown Prince had no intention to let me off, then even if I were to let you off now, it would be useless. So I might as well take the opportunity to torture you now, otherwise if you were to make reprisals against me in future, won't I lose out? Crown Prince was rendered speechless. Because what Huang Yueli said was absolutely right. Since she knew he would take revenge, of course she would have to eliminate him completely. If he was in her shoes, he would do the same too. If he wanted Huang Yueli to let him off, by right, he should entreat piteously. But for such an arrogant person like Crown Prince to beg Huang Yueli, he was not able to open his mouth at all. It was because of his hesitation for just that quarter of an hour. The splitting pain from his severed meridians quickly made him abandon his last pride and started pleading for mercy. Bai. Third Miss Bai, please have mercy. I beg you, please let me go, let me have a straightforward. Crown Prince tossed and turned as he rolled around the ground, repeatedly pleading for mercy. Hearing his bouts of sorrowful pain, even the imperial tutor and others had turned green from fright, drained of all colors. All of them casted their sights on Mo Yi and Huang Yueli, their gazes filled with terror and revulsion, but they did not dare to let out any sounds just because they were afraid of diverting their attention to their side, henceforth causing them to fall into the same tragedy. It was to the extent that Crown Prince had almost fainted from the pain before Huang Yueli asked Mo Yi to stop. Li Moying's face was pale white as cold sweat had drenched his entire body. Due to the tossing and turning and struggling on the ground, his clothes were sodden with dirt as he looked utterly grimy. At this present moment, he did not look one bit like his usual aloof demeanor. Instead he looked as dirty as a roadside beggar. Huang Yueli slowly walked in front of him and stopped. Li Moying was unable to speak any words out, so he could only look at her bitterly. Huang Yueli lowered her tone as she spoke. Crown Prince, do you think I'm too vicious? No matter how you begged, I didn't let you off. But that year, when a 6-year-old child was whipped by you, bitterly pleading for mercy, have you ever thought of letting him off? When he was made to kneel by you on that icy cold ground as a punishment, have you ever thought of letting him off? He was only a child and he had a weak disposition, without even a bit of cultivation talent. Her voice was very light and soft, as though it was reverberating from somewhere far away. But when he heard these words, Crown Prince's heart became abnormally shocked and surprised. The child she had spoken of, naturally, was Li Moying. Crown Prince had never thought that Huang Yueli would torture him in this way just because she was taking revenge for Li Moying. Huang Yueli continued, Crown Prince, did you know why Li Moying's potential had long surpassed you but yet he had been silently tolerating, and not kill you? Did you really think that with the so-called status of a small country's crown prince, It was enough to scare him off? Or did you think he was kind enough to treat you like his own brother? You can also listen on. How would I know what would he want to do? Crown Prince's was tongue-tied and didn't know how to reply to that. At the Peach Blossom Banquet, Li Moying's attitude towards him had been normal. Crown Prince had thought that even though he had tried to murder Li Moying when he was young, but since Li Moying was just a piece of trash and his life or death was determined by him, his royal brother's mood, so naturally he would not exact revenge. It was until Crown Prince had almost injured Huang Yueli that Li Moying finally flew into a rage and shattered his meridians in just one blow. Crown Prince had also retrospect on this matter. Since Li Moying was able to cultivate long ago, and since his cultivation was so high, why did he restrain his emotions for so many years and not flared up? Was it because of that near-death incident when he was only 6 years old, that fever which had burnt up so badly that his previous memories had been forgotten? However, upon hearing Huang Yueli's words, Crown Prince suddenly realized that not only did Li Moying didn't lose his memories and had not forgotten everything in the past, he had even related his part to his fiancée. Since that was the case, why would he let him get off scot-free for so many years? Huang Yueli looked at his terrified expression, and as a flush of elatedness rushed up, a sliver of grief welled up too. Just thinking back about how Li Moying had suffered under this man in front of her, she was unable to control the heartache and fury building up within her. She coldly sneered, that was because, before Empress Ming passed on, she had made him swear to heavens that he would definitely not do anything to fight against his siblings, and break your imperial father's heart. Otherwise, did you think you can live until today? Upon hearing these, besides being shocked, Crown Prince suddenly heaved a sigh of relief. It turned out that Empress Ming had deeply loved their imperial father so much that she even made her own son took such an oath. Since that was the case, doesn't it mean that no matter under what condition, Li Moying would not be able to kill him? This was equivalent to an amnesty medal. No matter how powerful Li Moying was or how high his cultivation went, under the restriction of such an oath, he had nothing to fear. After all, to stand by one's oath was extremely important to practitioners. If news were to leak out, one would be despised by everyone under the heavens. There was finally some life on Crown Prince's pale face. By Ruoli, since that's the case, aren't you going to release me? Don't tell me you're going to go against the oath and kill me instead. Crown Prince had thought that since he had fallen into Huang Yueli's hands this round, he would definitely end up dead. He had never expected that she could not do anything to him. With this thought in mind, he relaxed slightly. However, Huang Yueli sneered chillingly, Crown Prince, don't you think you've set your mind at ease too soon? The person who swore that he would not take your life is Li Moying, not me. Since he can't put his hands to it, I'm very happy to share his worries for him. You. Crown Prince instantly sprouted a headful of sweat. What do you want? You're his fiancée. If you were to kill me and word leaks out, the debt will ultimately fall back onto Li Moying and he will still despised by everyone. So what? Huang Yueli replied disapprovingly. I will kill whoever I want to, even if it's Li Moying, he will not be able to control me. The fear that Crown Prince had felt had risen to the peak. Furthermore, the torment within his heart was much more serious than his physical injuries. He had a feeling that Huang Yueli was enjoying his panic-stricken expression, so she had been making a fool out of him. Every single time, she would give him a little hope thinking that he would be able to escape unscathed, but immediately after that, she would crush that hope to pieces. You can also listen on. The ups and downs had already caused him to enter a perturbed state of mind as he was subjected to torment. Crown Prince felt that he was about to go mad. Luckily, just at this moment, Huang Yueli seemed to have enough fun, or perhaps it was out of her goodwill that she decided to let him off. She stood upright and said, Initially I wanted to cut you up into 1,000 pieces to exact revenge for Li Moying. Just too bad, you're still of use to me, so I'll let you retain your life for a while more. But although I won't kill all of you personally, whether you can leave the royal treasury alive would be another case, so here's wishing you good luck. Saying that, she turned her head to call upon Mo Yi. Brother Mo Yi, on the way in, did you fancy any treasures? Whichever you've taken a fancy on, just go ahead and keep it. Don't stand on ceremony with them. Mo Yi laughingly replied, "Third miss, to tell the truth, when I was on my way in earlier, I had already kept some pieces of magical beast cores and spirit jades. The rest were all a load of worthless stuff and it was troublesome to move it all so your subordinate couldn't be bothered." Huang Yueli nodded. "Since that's the case, we should get going as it's not early anymore." "Yes." Huang Yueli led him out of the treasury's main entrance and strutted right out. Leaving behind them was an immobile crown prince whose meridians had been severed for the second time and a huge bundle of third and fourth degree realm experts who were clamped up like a bunch of rats. Imperial Tutor heaved a sigh of relief when he saw Huang Yueli and Mo Yi's departure. He tried to shift his profound energy to his surroundings in an attempt to shake off the ropes. Quickly, everyone work together and blast this clamp apart. Or at least try to loosen these ropes. The clamp mechanism is not too far off, we must think of a way to reach that area. Right, everyone listened to Imperial Tutor. The few of them worked hard together and finally broke the rope. Just as they were preparing to break apart the clamp, they felt a slight tremor within the treasury. Do any of you felt that the room is moving? Yes, don't tell me you have the same feeling. I thought it was my misperception. It's real. All of them looked at their surroundings in shock, but the four walls didn't seem to have any changes. But there seemed to be something slightly, barely unnoticeable change. What kind of situation was this? Only Imperial Tutor expressed an matchless appalling expression. No good, that wretched lass had activated the Royal Treasury's self-destruction mechanism. Self-destruction mechanism? What is that? Everyone knew it sounded anything but reassuring, and as they were raising questions, they had already started to break out in cold sweat. Imperial Tutor's expression became even more imposing. This self-destruction mechanism was set up in case of war, where if we were to encounter the situation where we were not able to move the treasures in time and did not wish to let the other party gain the treasures, so under no alternative would we activate this switch. Once it has been activated, the surrounding four walls will gradually draw close to the core until the walls have completed closed up and all the items are crushed to smithereen. Haven't you noticed that the surrounding space have been gradually getting smaller? The others carefully observed for a moment and everyone's faces took a huge change. It's really so. Why did it come to this? What should we do? That's it. Don't tell me I'm really going to die here. Imperial Tutor, Sir Imperial Tutor, quickly think of an idea. How can we escape from here? Everyone were shooting their mouths off, pleading with the Imperial Tutor for help. However, in the Imperial Tutor's heart, he was even more anxious and uncertain than anyone else. You can also listen on. Imperial Tutor was very clear that the self-destruction mechanism in the Royal Treasury was an extremely top-secret information, and it wasn't until the demise of the entire country before it would be activated. So the only person who knew how to activate the self-destruction mechanism was the Emperor. Even the Crown Prince was not qualified to get associated with this top-secret information, so naturally Imperial Tutor did not know any better. But now, this mechanism had suddenly been activated. How did Huang Yueli get to know of this top secret? How could she possibly activate the self-destruction mechanism? Surely it could not been told to her by the Emperor personally, right? No, this was impossible. Or could it be that the Emperor had already decided to leave the position of Crown Prince to Prince Yu Wang, so he conveyed the top-secret information to him and Prince Yu Wang let the information out to Huang Yueli? The more Imperial Tutor thought, the more flustered he became. But to him, the most important thing now was to quickly escape from the clamp and from this hellish place, otherwise not only him, even the Crown Prince, would be going to die here today. He spoke with a gloomy expression. Everyone, normally we are locked in constant strife and everyone would have your own life-preserving amulet, but today, we might just die here. So everyone, stop hiding your life-preserving amulet, bring it out. All of us, only have this once chance. Even though Huang Yueli didn't witness it with her own eyes, she could roughly guess what happened in the treasury. She took quick light steps and brought Mo Yi back to the valiant martial manner. Today she had tormented some lowly dregs, but what made her happiest was that she had personally executed corrective punishment on Crown Prince. She had long been displeased with the Crown Prince. A hypocrite who considered himself to be a Casanova. If he were to bully her, She would not bother, but he had even taken action against such a young child. Thinking about the handsome looks on Li Moying, how cute could he had been when he was young? If she had such a adorable little baby, she would smile even in her dreams. Huang Yueli thought about the original version of Li Moying and her lips curled up slightly. Even she had not noticed how gentle her smile was. This kind of smile had been caught in Mo Yi's eyes and he was surprised by it and took several glances at her, thinking whether he should open his mouth or not. Huang Yueli caught his gazes and turned around to ask, "Brother Mo Yi, what did you want to say?" Mo Yi replied, "Crown Prince and the rest, will they really be buried alive in there?" Huang Yueli shrugged her shoulders as she answered, "Surely it won't be that tragic. Although that self-destruction mechanism had been activated, but I'd made some slight adjustments to it, so the speed of closing was slower by 3 times of the normal." In Imperial Tutor's hands was the distribution map of the Royal Treasury's mechanisms, so if they were to grab hold of time, they should still be able to escape at the very last moment. Mo Yi responded, "I see, I had thought that. Third Miss, you're really intending to get rid of them all at one go." "I wanted to." Huang Yueli apportioned her arms, but unfortunately if the Crown Prince, Imperial Tutor and the others had all died, this matter would blow up. By then, I would have to leave the South Yu Kingdom. Now it's just nice, I still need the Crown Prince to be my scapegoat. As she said that, her mouths let out an astute smile. Mo Yi heard and hurried replied, "Third Miss, actually, you need not stay on in South Yu Kingdom. With your outstanding talent, if you were to wander and experience the world, it would be good as well. Your subordinate can bring you to the sect to find my master. With your innate gift and status as master's fiancée, I'm sure you can successfully enter the sect and learn even higher level skills. You can also listen on." Huang Yueli was stunned for a moment as she had never expected Mo Yi to say such a thing, but immediately following that, she shook her head. "Better not. I still have some matters to settle in South Yu Kingdom. Besides that, isn't Li Moying's sect extra secretive? I know of some reputable sects' rules. Although of some the disciples have parents and children, but they're not allowed anywhere near the sect. For someone like me to appear there suddenly, it's just not right. That's different. Master is not any ordinary disciple, and in the sect, no one dares to go against Master. What's more, the feelings Master has for you is different, so naturally he will protect you." Mo Yi spoke favorably of his master. However, Huang Yueli continued to shake her head, "Forget it, this matter is too early to be discussed upon now. I still have plenty of things which I want to do." Mo Yi wanted to continue persuading her, but upon seeing Huang Yueli's end of discussion expression, he swallowed the words stuck in his throat back into his stomach. The entire journey back was silent. Mo Yi didn't dare to make his future mistress angry, while Huang Yueli had fallen into deep thoughts. Not that she had never considered leaving South Yu Kingdom. In actual fact, she was pretty sure that she would be leaving this place rather soon, and it was impossible to waste too much time in South Yu Kingdom. Her focus was to use the fastest speed possible to continue cultivating. Only when she could step on the peak then would she be able to find out the truth about her past life. If she were to stay in this small place for too long, not only was she unable to get the resources which would in turn affect her cultivation, the surrounding geniuses were not enough, so she would not gain enough competition, and it would likely sap away a practitioner's will, causing their cultivation to come to a standstill. To an experienced practitioner like Huang Yueli, she was most unlikely to make this type of mistake. So leaving was a must. But before leaving the South Yu Kingdom, Huang Yueli wanted to look for traces of the treasury which Bai Liu Feng had left behind. Previously she had found the jade pendant in the blood feather silk cage but had not known the exact use for it. Huang Yueli always believed that she was able to find another clue within the South Yu Kingdom. Now that her body was of the flame spirit physique and with such shocking cultivation condition, this was definitely not something coincidental, so her background shouldn't be that simple. In order to hasten her cultivation, she must first find out the secret behind her background, and naturally, the simplest way was to find out from the clue that Bai Liu Feng had left behind. Of course, even if it wasn't to look for her parents, Huang Yueli had never considered to look for Li Moying at his sect. Although Li Moying treated her very well and she didn't dislike him. But between them, there was still other forces of obstruction. And that was Mu Chengying. Just recalling the love entanglement affairs in her previous life many years ago, the heartbreak and regret that she continuously haunt her at night, Huang Yueli was very sure that her feelings towards Mu Chengying had been deeply etched within her soul, unable to be diminished. As for Li Moying, perhaps he might be the type of person that she liked, but they were destined to meet but not fated to be together. What she could do for Li Moying was only to beat up the crown prince violently, as a way to vent his anger for him. So now that the both of them were separated because of Li Moying's sect matters was actually a good thing. The distance between them were very far apart, and without noticing, this unfathomable feeling that tugs her heartstrings would gradually disappear. By then, it would naturally come to an end and would not hurt Li Moying. After some time, she would secretly leave South Yu Kingdom and find an opportunity to get Mo Yi to return. In this way, it would really sever the last communication pathway between the both of them. You can also listen on. When she thought of this, Huang Yueli's mood started to weigh down. To have come to such a decision, it would be obvious how angry and disappointed Li Moying would be. However, her heart already belonged to someone else, and there was no way she would two-time the both of them, so the consequence was to break his heart. She must toughen up her mentality, as it was better to cut short the suffering. Both of them silently returned to the valiant martial manor. After a difficult day, the sky had now turned dark. Everyone in the manor were waiting anxiously, terrified that something had happened to both of them, so upon their safe arrival, everyone finally let down their tensed emotions. Huang Yueli first went to look upon the bedridden Cai Wei. Seeing her entire body full of multiple injuries, she sighed with emotions. Although Cai Wei had an innate gift for cultivation and she had already taught her the cultivation method to do so, but Cai Wei didn't pay much attention on her cultivation because she was still positioning herself as a role of a servant girl. Perhaps it was because she had been a servant for such a long time, so she was not able to assume her new role so quickly. When Cai Wei saw Huang Yueli appear in front of her, she was extremely touched as she tried to get up to give a curtsy. "Thigh. Third miss, why have you come here? It's very late now, please go back and rest." Huang Yueli pressed down on her shoulder and helped her get back on the bed. From her realm ring, she took out several bottles of medicinal pills and left it by her bedside. "Your injuries are rather serious, but luckily it's only an external injury and had not hurt your meridians. Here are some bottles of third-grade pills. Take some later and by tomorrow morning, you should feel much better." Cai Wei turned pale with fright. What? Third-grade pills? How much money do these costs? "Third miss, your servant just needs to rest a few days and I'll be much better. There's no need to waste these pills, and what's most, these are high-grade life-saving pills." "In what way are these high-grade?" Huang Yueli replied disapprovingly. After she had advanced to the defensive profound realm, the Sky Phoenix ring also advanced alongside, and the pills and materials in it had advanced from second grade to third grade. So whatever third-grade pills she had, she shared a little with Cai Wei, which took no effort at all. She thought for a moment and took out a bottle of spirit-raising pill. This pill was something that she had brought out in the previous 1,000 treasure auction, and it had once attracted many practitioners to snatch up this. Even Bai Ruoqi wanted it so badly that she was cheated of a small fortune out of it, and had almost ended up bankrupt. But now, her realm ring was full of these spirit-raising pill and she had as much as she needed. Huang Yueli put down the pills and said, "You don't need to help me save on these pills. Your young mistress is no longer that small, pitiful girl of the past. These pills are nothing much. And you, stop treating yourself as a lowly serving girl. If you don't wish to continue being bullied, then you need to strengthen up. I'll leave these spirit-raising pills here for you. If you are not able to advance to at least the Qi Profound Realm 5th stage within 3 months, then don't bother to come look for me again." Cai Wei's eyes turned wide unbelievably. What? Qi Profound Realm, F, 5th stage? How can that be possible? Your servant had just started cultivating and there are many things that I still don't know. Second miss, who was a genius, also spent around 2 years to reach the Qi Profound Realm 5th stage. Huang Yueli calmly replied, "Your innate gift is not much different from Bai Kuo Qi. And the cultivation method that I had taught you is of much higher grade than hers. Besides that, with the effects of these spirit-raising pills, which you should have heard of before, what reason do you have to feel that you're worse than her? You can also listen on. Cai Wei did not dare to defy her order and could only lower her head to admit the fact silently. But in her heart, she was still feeling restless, unable to believe completely that she was able to successfully cultivate to the Qi Profound Realm 5th stage. Huang Yueli didn't speak anymore. She had already come to this stage, and however more she added on would be meaningless. Cai Wei had never been confident enough, and this was entirely her own problem. What Huang Yueli could do was to give her a little more pressure with the hope that during the process of her advancement, she would be able to gain her self-confidence. Otherwise, just based on her cowardly outlook, it would be hard for her to become a real practitioner. Cai Wei's matter had also given Huang Yueli a reminder. In this batch of servants that she recruited, although they were all loyal and had a certain level of cultivation gift, but they were still picked out from the bottom rung of the ladder, and like Cai Wei, there were a number of them who lacked self-confidence. Looked like it's time to give all of them some pressure. Moreover, just basing on this method of recruitment, it would be extremely tough, so she would need to reconsider other methods to recruit subordinates with powerful potential. Huang Yueli left from Cai Wei's room, returned directly to her own bedroom and continued to go into closed-door cultivation. She had just completed her breakthrough this morning, and it was an entire realm of continuous breakthrough. Although her power had greatly increased, it came along with several hidden damages as well. Her breakthrough speed was too fast, and the amount of time she spent at every single stage was extremely short, practically just a couple of breaths' time. With such a situation, her had absorbed a little too much profound energy into her body, and the cultivation was not stable enough, so it would easily cause profound energy to become chaotic. Moreover, after her breakthrough, she had continuously struck out a couple of moves, which led to the profound energy in her body to encounter great fluctuations. So after she had settled all the troubling matters, the first thing she wanted to do was to continue her closed-door cultivation to stabilize her cultivation. And this round, there was no one who would come and disturb her peace. In the quiet night, Mo Yi stood under a big tree not too far away, and in his arms lay a white-breasted falcon. When the white-breasted falcon saw him, it seemed very excited as it agitatedly rubbed against Mo Yi for half a day until his clothes had wrinkled up. Mo Yi patiently pacified it for a while and tied a small bamboo tube on one of the white-breasted falcon's leg. This white-breasted falcon was their sect's commonly used mode of communication, and within the bamboo tube laid a letter to be delivered. Li Moying had left a few birds behind when he had stayed in the South Yu Kingdom. Before he parted ways with Huang Yueli, he had repeatedly reminded Mo Yi to use the white-breasted falcon to send letters and maintained contact with him. Such an intelligent person like Mo Yi understood his meaning the minute he heard it. His master wanted him to note down all that had revolved around Huang Yueli as soon as possible and send the reports to him. Mo Yi sometimes could not believe that his master was obviously a cool and calm character, and he especially loved to use the cold and indifferent attitude towards women. But towards Third Miss, he seemed to have changed into a different person completely, turning into a piece of chewing gum. His master had retained his best bodyguard to stay beside Third Miss. The reason was not only to ensure her safely, but more importantly, was to gain better control over the Third Miss's whereabouts and current situation. Mo Yi was able to grasp Li Moying's intention, and he felt that today was the day where he must pen down a letter to Li Moying. Third Miss had just returned to the South Yu Kingdom and had already met with so many scums who were not afraid of death, and since they dare to come forward to create trouble for her, he must naturally inform his master about this. Most importantly, Huang Yueli had personally taught the Crown Prince a lesson on behalf of Li Moying. If his master were to find out about this matter, he would definitely be ecstatic. You can also listen on. After all, during this entire duration, Mo Yi served as a bystander and saw for himself how Li Moying and Huang Yueli got along. Between the both of them, Li Moying had always been the spontaneous party and had already let go of his status of the #1 expert of the younger generation as he used various means and ways to pursue Huang Yueli. However, Huang Yueli kept rejecting his advances. Although the actions between them sometimes looked ambiguous and Huang Yueli seemed to have some feelings towards Li Moying. However, from the occasional expressions of defeat in his master's eyes, it should be because Third Miss had yet to completely accept him. And this actually made Mo Yi and the rest very surprised. Even though Huang Yueli had guts, great innate gift and earned the respect of the subordinates, but no matter what, their master should be more than enough to be worthy of her. If she was dissatisfied with such an unsurpassed innate skilled and pitilessly handsome man, then who did she wanted to marry? However, the truth was displayed right before their eyes, and that was Huang Yueli's lukewarm reaction towards Li Moying. As a subordinate, they were concerned for their master under such a situation. But now that Huang Yueli had displayed the act of revenge on behalf of Li Moying, Mo Yi felt that he was able to see the light in front of the tunnel. For someone who was able to recall every single word Li Moying had mentioned, to feel anguished for Li Moying's suffering during his childhood and to exact revenge on behalf of him, without a concern for the risks that she had to face. This act only proved that Third Miss also liked his master, right? Mo Yi felt that he found a crux to the question and naturally could not wait to convey the message to Lo Moying immediately. He hoped that when his master saw this piece of news, it would raise his spirits, and once he had successfully settled the sect's matters, he would be able to arrive earlier to pick up Third Miss. Mo Yi had never in his wildest dream imagined that Huang Yueli was actually thinking of how to break off the relationship between Li Moying and her. Sky Cloud City Northeastern Region. A majestic mountain stretched into the clouds, and hidden in there was the most reputable sect in the South Sky region. As Li Moying sat along the veranda, a white-breasted falcon swooped in from afar and circled several rounds in the sky before landing in front of him. He was holding on to his sword in an apathetic expression, but when he saw the bamboo tube on the white-breasted falcon's foot, the expression on his face instantly relaxed and that set of deep black eyes was filled with anticipation. His jade-like fingers gently exerted some force, separated the bamboo tube and removed a scroll of letter. At the first glance, Li Moying's eyes dimmed with slight disappointment. This letter was from Mo Yi, and not his little fox's handwriting. Although he had already expected her not to have any conscience and he gauged that she would probably had forgotten about him, but not having received any letters from her still made him feel unhappy. Li Moying quickly read further. It was almost to the ending towards the last part as he got more and more surprised. Finally his aloof lips uncontrollably curved upwards. He hadn't expected his little fox to do such thing, to vent out his anger for him. Although he didn't witness it personally, but just thinking about it, Li Moying could roughly make out the scenario and how pathetic the crown prince had been at that time, and how melancholy he felt at that time. His little fox was really black-bellied to the core. When she wanted to fix someone, she absolutely made the other party live in utter misery, unable to choose between life or death. And this round, she had done it entirely for him. You can also listen on. Just thinking about this made Li Moying's chest filled with indescribable joy. He had always thought this little thing did not put him in her heart, and it had always been his own wishful thinking, going all out in hot pursuit. Even though he looked his usual demeanor on the surface, with his resolute approach and overbearing manner, as though he had never encountered any setbacks, not showing any signs of backing off. In reality, only he himself knew that every single time he was rejected by Huang Yueli, his heart would feel very hurt. No one would like the feeling of being rejected by the person whom they fancied. But after he found out that Huang Yueli had helped him to vent his anger, Li Moying felt that all the setbacks he had encountered was all worth it. Now, didn't his little fox put him in her heart? Otherwise, why would she took the initiative to care about how he felt? Perhaps to the person she liked, there was just this tiny little bit of feeling. Although this tiny bit was not as much as how much he felt for her, but was that really a problem at all? Practitioners with such innate gifts like them had long lives, and in future, they would have a lot of time together to slowly nurture their feelings. There would be a day where that tiny bit of like would grow to become many, many likes, and to the extent of becoming love. As long as he could get this little fox, what he had was plenty of patience and time. Li Moying kept the letter away and took out another piece of paper, penning down a few words of reply. His letter was very short, only indicating that everything was going on smoothly in the sect, and not too long later, he would be able to return to South Yu Kingdom. With that he changed the topic and hinted to Mo Yi that for future replies, it must be supplemented with Huang Yueli's letter in her handwriting. With that, he stuffed the letter back into the bamboo tube and hung it back onto the white-breasted falcon's leg. "Go," he said as he released the falcon into the sky with a wave of his hand. Looking at the white-breasted falcon spread its wings and skitter into the sky, Li Moying's smile hanging on his lips had not vanished. That little thing's mouth was usually very rigid and had never given him any nice words, but in the end when he wasn't looking, she had defended him. Looks like her usual rejections were just because she was shy. Senior big brother. "So you were here." When Li Moying was daydreaming, a lady's voice echoed from his back suddenly. That voice was gentle and sweet, as though the gentlest water which was flowed outwards. Just from the melodious sound was enough to make out that the owner of the voice was a peerless beauty. However, upon hearing the voice, Li Moying's smile instantly grew smaller and the expression on his face gradually turned back to his usual frosty look. From afar, a young lady dressed in a light purplish flowy dress slowly walked towards him. She looked at most like she was 17 or 18 of age. Her skin was as fair as snow with willow eyebrows, big eyes, and delicate features without any flaws, almost like she just walked out from a painting. Besides that, she carried a noble air of elegance and the sleeves on her robe fluttered from her slow movement as though an angel from heaven had descended onto earth. Anyone who had seen her would involuntarily name her with a title beauty. However, that was not the case for Li Moying. He could not even be bothered to cast her a glance. His cold thin lips parted and spat out two words coldly, "What's up?" A glint of disappointment flashed past the beauty's eyes but she still tenderly replied, "Senior brother, I heard that you have been at the Heaven Crate Valley holding onto your sword for the past 10 hours. Even though time is tight, you should still take care of your body and foregoing food and sleep just to practice your skills. You can also listen on." Beauty's melodious words was gently flowing as that pair of pretty eyes stayed glued on Li Moying. However, on that pillously handsome face was still the usual chilly expression. A sliver of disappointment winced upon the beauty's heart as she looked at the powerfully gifted man who had surpassed all others of his kind. Including that devilish handsome face, the number of ladies who liked him was simply too many. Unfortunately, he acted in the same demeanor towards everyone else, as though he only had cultivation filled up all his thoughts, without any space for any romantic feelings. Even if it was towards his master's daughter, South Sky Region's widely known #1 talented lady, Murong Fei, he was also stingy on giving a sliver of warmth. Disappointment was a definite answer, but Murong Fei's unbalanced feeling after knowing that Li Moying had treated all the women in the same way. Since no other women was able to register in Li Moying's eyes, then this outstanding man would become hers sooner or later. The reason was because only a lady of her status and innate gift would be compatible with Li Moying. What's more, the both of them had grew up together since young, so they were considered as childhood sweetheart. For many years, Murong Fei had always been certain of this. However, just a few days ago when her younger sister Murong Ni had made her way back from the Dark Moon Forest, she also brought back a piece of shocking news. After hearing this news, she could no longer sit still and pondered incessantly. Hence she decided to take the risk of being chased away by Li Moying and dropped by to test out his reaction. Seeing the silent Li Moying, Murong Fei summoned up all her courage and leaned slightly closer to him while stretching out that pallet of food in her hands. "Senior brother, I'm worried that your cultivation these few days had been too tiring, so I've specially made you some medicinal cuisine. Please try a little before continuing on your cultivation." Saying that, Murong Fei placed the plate on top of the big stone next to Li Moying as her slender fair hand lifted the cover and used the spoon to stir the soup. The rich, clear soup glistered in a rosy hue and along with the stirring let out a whiff of tempting aroma spreading outwards. Murong Fei placed the soup in front of Li Moying as she smiled. "Senior brother, drink a little? I had specially gathered the dews on the Snowy Peaks roseleaf flower early this morning, combined with 10 over 4th grade medicinal herbs and the tenderloin of the amethyst-tailed ferret, boiling it for over 16 hours before it's finally done. This soup is best for replenishing profound energy and will aid you greatly in your cultivation. Please try some." Li Moying's vision fell upon the soup as his heart wavered slightly. He suddenly recalled the scene several days ago when he awoke on the flying ship and Huang Yueli had personally made him some food. The food that little lass made has not consisted of any exquisite ingredients but just an ordinary bowl of minced chicken porridge and a tray of steamed dumplings. However, that indescribable great taste was the best thing that he had ever had in his entire life. Whenever he thought of how Huang Yueli had treated him ever so gently when he was an invalid, Li Moying's lips curled upwards very slightly. Murong Fei's eyes turned wide as she saw that rare smile on his lips, as her heart went thump, thump, thumping non-stop. This man was really a trouble-level Devildor. Usually when he put on that icy look, naturally he looked cool and smart, but with this magnificent smile unmatched in his generation, it would put any woman to shame. And he actually smiled. Murong Fei had known Li Moying for years, but the number of times he had smiled could be counted using one hand. Yet now, he let out such a warm smile. You can also listen on. Even Murong Fei had never seen such a smile before. Just for that one moment, Murong Fei became dumbfounded, but after a while, she gradually regained her senses and in her heart welled up a surge of delightfulness. She had never expected that Li Moying would smile so warmly upon seeing the soup that she made. It looked like he was extremely satisfied with the soup. Luckily, all the efforts that she had put in had not been wasted, from flipping classics to search for medicinal cuisines which could help to restore profound energy to subsequently paying a high price for the ingredients, and finally to have wasted so much time and effort in boiling the soup. Murong Fei shyly lowered her chin as she replied coyly, "Senior brother, don't just look. Try some." Li Moying jolted as his thoughts remained on the kissing scenario when he and Huang Yueli were standing on the deck. The image was charming and gentle so much that he could not help but reveal a smile. However, at this moment, Murong Fei spoke out and broke into his yearning of his little fox, and that made Li Moying upset instantly. Turning back to look at the soup that Murong Fei made, although the color was pretty but it looked extremely loathsome and that smell was too rich, which could simply suffocate him to death. In what way would this soup taste good? It cannot be compared to the porridge and side dish that his little fox made. As Li Moying was thinking about it, he stood up and replied, "I have no appetite. Please take it back along with you. I want to continue practicing my swordplay." Astonishment filled up Murong Fei's face as she could not understand why had Li Moying's expression suddenly changed. Why had that warm and gentle expression suddenly disappear within a blink of an eye and changed into that usual chilly demeanor? But Murong Fei didn't feel that Li Moying was upset. After all, Li Moying had just smiled. That shows that he was satisfied with the soup. Perhaps the reason for him not wanting to drink now was because of the immense pressure and all his thoughts were concentrated on cultivation, and not wasting any moment on food. Senior brother had always been like this. Not only did he have an exceedingly refined innate gift, he had also been cultivating hard as always, which was why he was able to become the #1 expert among the South Sky region's younger generation. When she thought of this, Murong Fei's heart started to hoist the feeling of admiration. She used the most gentlest tone that she ever had and tried asking again, "Senior brother, you really shouldn't neglect your own well-being like this. Even though our sect and the West Sky region's #1 sect have a wager and it's going to start in a month's time, as you are our most important chip in the entire sect and will definitely be fighting in the final round, but do you need to push yourself that tightly? Surely you will have some time to finish up this soup, right?" Silence responded to her query as Li Moying had already lifted his amethyst light sword and walked towards the reflective cliff, preparing to practice his swordplay once more. Murong Fei chased after him hurriedly, holding that bowl of soup in her hand and bringing it to Li Moying once again. "Senior brother, please just try one mouth. You won't need much time." Ah. When Murong Fei had rushed upwards, she suddenly came very close. Li Moying smelled that indistinct fragrance coming from her and his brows suddenly flashed a sliver of disgust. These large sects' daughters simply loved to empty the entire bottle of perfume onto themselves. But no matter what, they cannot be compared to the natural sweet fragrance coming from his little fox. He only needed to go near Huang Yueli slightly and he would be drawn in by that fragrance, unable to control his urge to lean in closer and closer, bit by bit. But the fragrance on Murong Fei was simply overpowering and that made him feel unbearably vulgar, totally unable to accept it. Li Moying inclined his head towards the side in an attempt to evade, but coincidentally, Murong Fei was still holding on to the bowl of soup while rushing towards him. He lost his patience and stuck out his hand. You can also listen on. A loud shattering sound resounded. The ceramic bowl was smashed onto the ground by him and instantly broke into several pieces, whereas the soup in the bowl had spilled all over the ground. Senior brother, Murong Fei was filled with disbelief as she stared at Li Moying blankly. Wasn't he just smiling just a moment ago? Didn't that mean that he was satisfied with the soup she made? Why then, did he not only not drink, and he even pushed it away? Murong Fei blinked her eyes as the rim of her eyes started to turn red. For a popular lady who was held to the skies, she would usually be surrounded by many suitors who couldn't wait to please her. If she were to cast them just one more glance, those talented youths would be ecstatic till they won't be able to sleep. However, such a popular lady like her only had eyes for Li Moying. She was willing to remain meek and subservient, to dirty her hands in the kitchen for him, but yet he don't seem to register this into his mind. What Murong Fei was even more unable to accept was after Li Moying had ditched her aside, he coldly said, "I'm now in closed-door cultivation. Who gave you the authority to come in and disturb me? In future, do not come in here again. I will break that person's legs who dares to allow you in." Saying that, Li Moying didn't even bother to cast her a glance, and without a word, he started to meditate, and very quickly, he entered the state of anatta. As Murong Fei looked at his indifferent back, a sliver of embitterment shot into her heart. Something was wrong, very wrong. Earlier, when she had come to look for Li Moying, from the distance, she saw Li Moying holding on to a letter, and as he was reading, he smiled brightly. At that moment, she had thought her eyes were failing her. Now that she recalled this scenario, Li Moying was probably really smiling, and he was smiling at that letter. And Li Moying's smile when she had lifted the lid of the soup bowl was probably due to remembering the contents of the letter and not because of the soup she made. It was her, showering affection on an uninterested party. But who wrote that letter? Why did such an unfeeling person like Li Moying smile so gently after reading the letter? Could it be that it was exactly like what Murong Ni mentioned, that Li Moying had found himself a fiancé in that small South Yu kingdom? And he was extremely gentle and caring, pampering her in all ways. No, this was impossible. How would Li Moying be easily ordered around and to accept the marriage arrangement? Even if there was such a fiancé, just based on Li Moying's blunt character, how would he even smile just because of a letter from a woman? No matter how many times Murong Fei had pondered about this, it seemed impossible. But in her heart, she still could not let it go. She awkwardly left the Heaven Crate Valley where Li Moying was practicing his swordplay, and she was unable to maintain that sweet, gentle smile on her face any further. That pillously beautiful face was filled with ice-cold chilly intent. Murong Fei had immediately found her way to Murong Ni's room, who was quietly recuperating inside. Instead of showing care and concern for her sister's injuries, she directly got straight to the point and started shooting out questions. "Nia, what you said previously, was it all the truth? Senior brother, he really has a fiancée?" Murong Ni had rarely seen Murong Fei acting in a loss of self-control and impatient manner, and suddenly her heart shot a sliver of joy. To tell the truth, in front of her elder sister whose innate gift and beauty had long surpassed herself, Murong Ni had never dared to display her interest in Li Moying. However, deep down in her heart, she could also feel jealousy. Both of them were the sect master's daughters, but she couldn't beat Murong Fei in any segment, so even the man she fancied had to be given up on a silver platter. You can also listen on. However, Murong Ni knew that even if she were to fight with her sister, she would not be able to win her. Besides, this sister of hers was not as elegant as she looked. In the past, there were many female disciples who had a liking for Li Moying as well, but subsequently they had disappeared without a trace. Murong Ni had long suspected that these matters had something to do with Murong Fei. But it's different now. No matter how much Murong Fei had wanted to keep Li Moying for herself, and no matter how she oppressed the other female disciples in the sect, it didn't matter anymore. Because Li Moying already had someone who he likes. Thinking of this, Murong-ni naturally did not restrain whatever she knew as her words flowed like water, in an attempt to provoke her. Of course it's true, why would I lie to you? I had witnessed it with my own eyes during this trip to the Dark Moon Forest with fifth brother. Senior brother had brought along a young lady and personally introduced her as his fiancée. What? So it's true? Murong Fei clenched her teeth as the silk handkerchief in her hand was squashed into a ball. Murong-ni continued, of course what I'm saying is the truth. If you don't believe me, you can go and ask fifth brother. He had seen if with his own eyes too, and second brother, who came later to the Dark Moon Forest, had also seen it. So, there's really such a person. Murong Fei was so jealous that she was unable to maintain her composure. Murong-ni felt much better after she saw Murong Fei's reaction. Huang Yueli was not an easy character to deal with, and Murong-ni she was definitely unable to outwit her. But surely her elder sister was different. As the highly valued eldest daughter of the sect master, with an 8th grade talent, she had plenty of schemes. Now that Murong Fei already knew about the existence of Huang Yueli, she wondered if the two of them were to encounter each other, who would have the upper hand. The best scenario would be neither side gained an upper hand. Perhaps she might have a chance to take the advantage. Murong-ni continued to add oil to fire as she intentionally added, speaking of this, elder sister, yesterday when I was telling you this, didn't you tell me it's impossible and senior brother would definitely not get engaged to that country bumpkin? Why did you come here to ask again? I heard that you had intentionally boiled a bowl of medicinal cuisine for senior brother. How was it, after drinking the soup? Was it effective? Murong-ni purposely poked the point where it hurt the most, and this was extremely effective. When Murong Fei recalled the cold manner that Li Moying had treated her, her heart started to fill with anger. She had thought his nature was just indifferent, so she didn't think much of it. But earlier he had let out such a gentle smile, just from reading a letter or when he was daydreaming by himself, he actually laughed out. What did it represent? Murong Fei had also seen couples who were passionately in love and was very sure that it was a display of deep affection. The fury in her heart could not be suppressed further as a flower vase in a corner was smashed to smithereens with a flick of her sleeve. The flower vase dropped heavily with a ping and broken into pieces as the fresh flowers fell all over on the ground. Not only was Murong-ni not anxious upon seeing her fly into a rage, her heart flew with joy. For Murong Fei to show such anger, this was something rarely seen. But every single time she flew into a rage, someone was bound to get into big trouble. It looked like Huang Yueli's good days were coming to an end. Murong-ni pretended to advise further, elder sister, what's wrong? Why did you get so worked up? That flower vase was a birthday gift from sixth sister several years ago. You can also listen on. Murong Fei immediately stopped her from continuing. Stop these rubbish. Since I broke your flower vase, I will naturally find something to make an exact one for you. Tell me clearly, that so-called fiancée that senior brother claimed, what's her background? What have you discovered in the Dark Moon Forest? Whenever Murong Fei mentioned the word fiancé, her intonation would suddenly become malevolent and every single syllable seemed to come out through the slits in between her teeth, filled with icy savage. And she was worried that Murong-ni would not tell the entire truth, so she added, you better say it properly. If you do, not only will I give you that 6th-tier spiritual baby pet that you always wanted, I will also help you to seal the pact with it. Even if she hadn't added this promise, Murong-ni would still tell her, but since now that she had offered a huge temptation, she became even more energetic. She was sniggering in her heart, thinking that the sandpiper and clam wore together, and as she was the fisherman, she stood to gain all the advantages. It would be better if they could fight to their deaths and make Li Moying disgusted. Elder sister, this fiancée of senior brother's, is some marquis's daughter in the South Yu Kingdom. She seems very young and from my estimation, she probably has not reached the marriageable age yet. Moreover, her cultivation is not high, seems only to be at the Qi Profound Realm 9 level. It seems that it was senior brother's paternal father who set the marriage arrangement for him. Murong Fei sneered coldly, I see. In this case, she's really a country bumpkin. Keek, for disciples from large sects like us, Our marriages are not decided by our biological parents but only by the sec. Senior brother's marriage cannot be valid at all. What's more, a first-degree realm country bumpkin, how can she possibly be a good match for senior brother? This is simply a joke. Murong Ni hurriedly added, that's right. That was what I had originally thought of as well, and I went to warn her that my elder sister, you, are senior brother's future wife. As for such a character like her, she's not even fit to warm up senior brother's bed. Murong Fei silently nodded, exactly. But elder sister, do you know what she said? She said that she's senior brother's officially engaged fiancée. Moreover, senior brother likes her, so you're just imagining that your love is reciprocated. What? This slut, both her status and cultivation are so lowly, and she dares to say this of me. Murong Fei was not someone who was easily instigated, but the person she minded most was Li Moying. It was unfortunate that just 1 hour ago, she had been rejected by Li Moying, and just as she was most embarrassed and hurt, she had to hear of such a news. And what Murong Ni had said was essentially the truth. Even though the last sentence was to sow discord, but these words were exactly what Huang Yueli had used to insult Murong Fei. Even if Murong Fei was there in person, Huang Yueli would have said the same things in front of her, just because it was all the truth, so it sounded like it had happened in that way. Murong Ni carried on, picking out parts of her stories, on the happenings in the Dark Moon Forest. She naturally hid the contents on where she had rivaled for affection of Li Moying and mentioned only about how cocky this fiancé was, or how she would use Li Moying as a support to bully her and even influence Li Moying's shadow guards and Luo Jiyun to revolve around her. Besides that, she also emphasized that Li Moying's illness and him being attacked by the magical beasts, so seriously hurt to the point of almost losing his life, was all due to Huang Yueli. You can also listen on. As Murong Fei continued listening, her heart grew with resentment and bewilderedness. What happened to senior brother? How could he allow such a shameless slut to stay beside his side and create havoc? Could it be that she had a hold on senior brother, which allowed her to continue staying by his side? Murong Ni quickly added more oil to the raging fire when she saw Murong Fei displaying such anger. Elder sister, from my observation, senior brother seemed to really be infatuated by this little lass. What? How can this be possible? Such an outstanding talent like senior brother has very high standards, so what would we see in this country bumpkin? You are still young, don't be fooled by that shameless slut. She told you that senior brother is infatuated by her and you actually believe her? Murong Fei didn't believe this because in the eyes of other daughters from the other sects and herself held Li Moying in a godly status. If any one of them was able to catch a glance from him, it would have been an extraordinary achievement. This kind of man would definitely stand on the pinnacle of the entire soaring heavens continent. If he didn't even choose Murong Fei, who had an outstanding talent and elegant demeanor among the other ladies, what more a country bumpkin? There was no way she would ever believe these words. Murong Ni hastily added, sigh, elder sister, I didn't want to believe this initially too. But you didn't see the attitude that senior brother gave her. I can only say he listens to her every word. I couldn't stand seeing her unbridled manner and merely lashed out a few words, and senior brother almost threw me out of the team. Moreover, fifth brother had already started greeting that lass as sister-in-law and senior brother didn't rebut him at all. Elder sister, surely you understand what that means, right? What? Junior brother Luo he actually greeted her that. How can it be not true? For a continuous 10 over days, he went going sister-in-law non-stop, and not only did senior brother not correct her, he smiled brightly every single time. Oh yes, elder sister, normally you'd seldom see senior brother smile, right? But in front of that lass, not only did senior brother keep smiling, he also shamelessly followed her around everywhere. When Murong Fei heard such a descriptive narration, the look on her face changed entirely. Earlier, it was just a look of fury, but now it had congealed into seriousness. If it was said that before this, Li Moying was rumored to have several fiancés, she would only feel anger, thinking that the idol in her heart had been dirted by those shameless women. But now when Murong Fei heard these, she felt a sense of crisis. The term sister-in-law was not something that could be used casually. With Li Moying's character, If the other party had not obtained his consent and had linked any other women to his name, he would have flown into a rage long ago. Moreover, Luo Jiun was a valued talent in the sect. He was an 8th grade talent, and although he was much easygoing as compared to Li Moying, but this kind of talent would also have his own pride. For him to use the term sister-in-law, it could only be incited by Li Moying. In this case, had Li Moying really taken a fancy to this country bumpkin who had popped out of nowhere? But how could this be possible? After so many years, could she have missed out that Li Moying's interest had actually been so different? To have a liking for a country bumpkin? No matter how Murong Fei thought about it, she was unable to sort things out. But she was very sure about one thing. That was, since Li Moying had truly fallen for that lass, then it would get in her way of being together with Li Moying, a huge obstacle. So she absolutely must get rid of this lass. You can also listen on. A vicious glint flashed past in Murong Fei's eyes. She turned to face Murong Ni and asked, "So there's such a thing? Then do you know what that little lass's name is?" Murong Ni recalled, "I think she's Yu Li. I heard senior brother kept addressing her as Leah." Leah. Such an affectionate and ambiguous term, it was obvious that only a couple who were passionately in love would use such a name. Murong Fei was totally unable to link such an addressing term to that cold and aloof senior brother of hers. How would that term ever come out from Li Moying, that cold-like-ice person's mouth? She could not even imagine what kind of situation that would have been. Jealousy rose to its highest point as it filled up Murong Fei's heart. She could no longer bear to stay in Murong Ni's room as she found an excuse and left in a hurry. Murong Fei returned to her own courtyard and started pacing around in the garden. After pacing up and down for several rounds, her heart was still unable to quieten down. She ordered her personal maid over, "Go, invite senior brothers Wu Fangping now." Very soon, a man dressed in navy blue robe walked in. He saw Murong Fei's silhouette and immediately strode over. "Junior sister Murong, why are you looking for me?" Murong Fei looked at him and let out a smile. "Senior brothers Wu, recently I heard that you had successfully mastered the profound 7 arsenopyrite strike, which is one of the most difficult profound skills in our sect." "Congratulations." Zhuo Fangping was stunned momentarily. Normally, Murong Fei was a very proud woman, and besides carefully trying to please Li Moying, towards the rest of them admirers, she always held an aloof attitude. Now that his goddess was smiling at him, Zhuo Fangping suddenly got excited. Could it be that because he had mastered this upper-level profound skill and had displayed his innate skill and power, so it made Murong Fei see him in a different light now? "Thanks to junior sister for your compliments. I've been working hard and my luck was slightly better." Zhuo Fangping replied modestly, but there was still a slight tinge of complacent on his expression. The corners of Murong Fei's lips were all smiles, but the expression in her eyes was still frosty. Zhuo Fangping was a direct disciple of an elder in the sect, and his innate gift and power was not comparable to Murong Fei, so at his current age of 24 years old, he had just entered the 5th degree realms cultivation stage. However, he was one of the most ardent pursuers of Murong Fei. Although Murong Fei scorned him quite a bit, but normally she would not be so stingy and would occasionally give him a few smiles to get him hooked so that he could help her to do the dirty work. As for now, the reason why she asked for Zhuo Fangping was naturally because she had a motive. Murong Fei conversed slightly with him before changing the topic. "Senior brothers Wu, there's a matter which is very important to me. But the battle with West Sky region is about to start anytime and I'm not allowed to leave the sect now." Murong Fei just started off slightly and Zhuo Fangping immediately agreed. "Junior sister, don't worry. You don't need to leave the sect. If there's any matter, I'll handle it on your behalf and I guarantee that you'd be duly satisfied." Murong Fei's lips curled upwards satisfactorily. As expected, men were just like dogs. Once they see a beauty, in order to steal their hearts, the beauty would only need to occasionally let out a smile and a couple of praises and they would do anything for her. Only Li Moying stood high up alone. Unlike the others, he did not win her favor, but yet he occupied her mind every single day. She was determined to win his heart. You can also listen on. Thinking about this, Murong Fei's fingers winced tightly on the silk handkerchief. She tried hard to compose her tone to sound natural. That's great, with senior brother's help, I can rest assured. But this matter requires you to make a trip to South Yu Kingdom and the distance is rather far. Zhuo Fangping didn't hesitate and immediately responded, no matter. Junior sister, just tell me what's on your mind. Murong Fei replied, help me make a trip to South Yu Kingdom and find a young lady called Yu Li. She should be a young miss of a rich family in the South Yu Kingdom, around 14 years of age, and her cultivation is just SOSO, at first-degree realm. She is also the fiancée of the second prince of South Yu Kingdom. Zhuo Fangping nodded his head without a doubt. Very few people knew the fact that Li Moying was from the South Yu Kingdom, and most people thought he was an orphan that the sect master had picked up. Only a few prominent characters and people closer to him, such as Luo Jiyun, knew his background. So Zhuo Fangping didn't know that fact at all. He only heard Murong Fei continuing, once you find this little lass, find a chance to kill her. Zhuo Fangping was stumped. This. Junior sister, why? Murong Fei's expression was calm as she replied coldly, senior brothers were, naturally I would have my own reasons, so you're not willing to help me? If you're not willing, I can find other senior brothers to help instead. Zhuo Fangping was originally hesitant, but when he heard these words, he immediately flustered. Don't, junior sister. Don't find anyone else. This matter is very simple, isn't she just a first-degree realm lass? Senior brother, I will settle this matter quickly and cleanly. There were many male disciples who wanted to win Murong Fei's favor. After all, who didn't hope to become the son-in-law of the sect master? Putting aside her status, just based on Murong Fei's beauty and innate talent, it was enough to make those talents pour their hearts out for her. Zhuo Fangping was very sure that if he didn't take up this task, there would be someone else who would be willing to help Murong Fei. By then, they would be able to show their faces in front of Murong Fei and win her favor. Zhuo Fangping didn't want to give up such a good opportunity to others. What's more, wasn't it just killing a person as a practitioner, whose hand were not stained? The reason for killing wasn't that important at all, and he was just asking because he was curious about Murong Fei. Even if there was no answer, it wasn't important at all. Murong Fei gave out a slight smile and replied, since that's the case, I'll give me advanced thanks to senior brother first. Zhuo Fangping stared at the faint smile as he blankly nodded his head. South Yu Kingdom. Valiant martial manner. Huang Yueli had been peacefully cultivating for the past few days, and basically she had already refined a large portion of the fire-attributed energy within her body, and the remaining required quite a bit of time before she could completely refine all the energy. So besides cultivating daily, she would also dabble in other work, such as refining profound weapons, or taking some time out to give pointers regarding cultivation to the people in her manor. Huang Yueli realized that ever since Mo Yi had arrived, all the people in the manor's cultivation had suddenly made tremendous improvements. For this, Huang Yueli specially observed quite a bit. The result was she discovered that under Mo Yi's hand, he used the Spartan training method. So whoever who were not able to complete the training mission had to face severe punishment. In this way, no one dared to laze around and were all training diligently, without a single bit of slack. You can also listen on. Not only that, Mo Yi had also picked amongst them few servants with high innate talent and perseverance to become the leader of the guards. Huang Yu was extremely satisfied with this. No wonder he was the right-hand man of Li Moying. No matter what he did, it was enough to make anyone relieved, as his arrangement was very well covered. In actual fact, Huang Yueli had thought of teaching those servants in the manor herself, but unfortunately, she had been busy cultivating and refining armaments, so she simply had no time. Mo Yi had done her a huge favor this time. During this day, Huang Yueli had just completed her cultivation and barely stepped out of her room when she saw Cai Wei running into her courtyard in a flurry. Third miss, something bad has happened. What's the matter? Cai Wei huffed and puffed. The palace, there are many people from the palace, a lot of golden scaled guards, saying that they are going to capture you and Sir Mo Yi into the palace. They said Crown Prince and Imperial Tutor pointed you two out, saying the robbery of the royal treasury had something to do with the both of you, and they want to punish you for the crime. When Huang Yueli heard this, not only did she not appear flustered, she smiled and said, "Looks like Li Moying and the rest are severely injured this time, so they could only get down their beds and fabricate accusation. Isn't that simply miserable?" She had expected this to happen sooner or later. The day she had made the royal treasury collapse, it was because of the self-destruction mechanism which buried the entire treasury beneath the ground. It was equivalent to losing the entire South Yu Kingdom's capital. For such a huge commotion to happen, how would the emperor not raise the alarm? Although it was peaceful in the valiant martial manner during this entire time, the atmosphere outside had already been turned topsy-turvy. Golden-scaled guards were capturing people all over the kingdom in order to find the mastermind who had wrecked the royal treasury. But this was what she wanted. Only then could her next step of her plan materialize. Huang Yueli's smile grew deeper. Cai Wei stamped her feet as she screeched, "Third miss, how could you still smile at this time? What should we do now?" Huang Yueli calmly replied, "Do nothing at all. Just make sure the main gate is shut tight closely and all off you continue to cultivate in the manor. I shall make a trip with Mo Yi to the palace." But, third miss, the palace is filled with golden-scaled guards and the imperial tutor is also present. If you and Sir Mo Yi were to enter, if Crown Prince were to resort to underhanded methods to harm you, what should you do? Harm me? He needs to have that potential to do so first. Huang Yueli didn't even think anything of it. The palace's imperial tutor and emperor's uncle's cultivation were only at the 4th degree realm. Not to mention that imperial tutor had been injured by Mo Yi several days ago. Judging from that, his injuries should not have recovered fully yet. Even if they were to combine their efforts together, they were still unable to defeat Mo Yi. If they were to really enter the palace, the one who fall into bad luck would definitely not be Huang Yueli. Under the worrying eyes of Cai Wei, Huang Yueli along with Mo Yi left the manor leisurely. Outside the manor entrance stood a team of golden-scaled guards waiting. Different from the usual bossy and domineering attitude, these golden-scaled guards had heard what happened in the valiant martial manor on that day and no one dared to act rashly on Huang Yueli's turf. All of them stood upright, not daring to enter directly. When they saw Huang Yueli coming out, they even bowed politely. The lead commander got off his steed and went forward to politely ask, "Third Miss Bai, the emperor had a verbal edict to invite you and Master Mo Yi into the palace immediately. I will like to trouble you to follow me to enter the palace." Huang Yueli raised her brow as she replied, "Then lead the way. You can also listen on." Huang Yueli had not expected the golden-scaled guards to be so courteous along the way, so she couldn't get angry with them. She wasn't an unreasonable person, so when others treated her with respect, she naturally won't make things difficult for them. Once they've entered the palace, she was brought quickly to the main hall. From afar, she had already heard the empress's wailing and howling. "Your Majesty, oh your Majesty, please seek justice for Moying. Moying. He's simply too pitiful." The empress cried pitifully. "My child the crown prince had his meridians severed by Li Moying, that brat. He had been bedridden for such a long time and it was only after Shuer finally reached home before he had recovered, but we had never expected that he would be harmed by Ruoli, that source of calamity." Following that was the emperor's voice. "Enough. We still don't know what is the truth yet. What's more, since Moying had just recovered, why didn't he stay at home to recuperate? Instead, why did he create trouble for Ruoli? Just what was he trying to do? Your Majesty, Ruoli definitely have something to do with Shuer incident too." In the midst of the sobbing and shouting, Huang Yueli had already strode into the main hall. Upon hearing the empress's words, she smiled slightly and cut into her words. "Your Majesty, why am I not able to understand what you're saying? What happened to the 7th princess? Why did you say it has something to do with me?" Empress's crying came to an end spontaneously, and as her eyes were locked dead on Huang Yueli as she spun around. Gnashing her teeth, she hissed, "Ruoli, you still dare to come here?" Huang Yueli innocently blinked her big eyes as she replied, "Your Majesty, His Majesty summoned for me, how can I not come? And why don't I dare to come?" Earlier when I was at the door, I could hear your majesty claiming that I had harmed the seventh princess. Where did that come from? You're still pretending. Huang Yueli's calm and composed attitude thoroughly infuriated the empress. Empress had never thought that this lass had the nerve to deal such a heavy blow to the country's crown prince and the princess, and after everything had been brought to light and she had been captured to be condemned, she was showing an unafraid look. And she still had the cheek to smile. Empress was raging with fury as she swore in her heart that she would thoroughly torture this lass in order to seek revenge for her 2 children. Empress retorted, "You dare to say Shue's matter had nothing to do with you? I have already checked things out clearly. That day, Shuera went to your valiant martial manor hoping to reminisce about the past, but in the end, the minute she came back, she turned into that manor. My Shuera had treated you as her best friend and looked for you the minute she returned, but how about you? How did you treat her?" Huang Yueli's look turned chilly. This empress was indeed as shameless as always, distorting the truth deliberately. Li Shuer had looked for her because she treated her like her best friend. There's actually such a close female friend who deliberately interrupt other people's advancement. Her big eyes grew wide with exaggeration and a confused expression filled her face. What did she end up as? I really don't know anything. That's right. That day, seventh princess had indeed visited my manor, but as I was in closed-door cultivation, I didn't have any time to receive her arrival. Seventh princess probably treated me as her family, so she didn't stand on any ceremony. Not only did she stay at my manor for an entire day, she also taught my servants a lesson, and injured my personal maid. Besides that, she also felt that my room needs to be renovated and helped me demolish it. Such a considerate way of thinking of my well-being. As her words came out of her mouth, Empress Dowager's voice came echoing from the side. You can also listen on. What's happening? What Leah meant was, not only was Shuer beating up people in the valiant martial manner, she was also throwing things around. Outrageous. As a princess, what happened to her upbringing? Huang Yueli spun around and noticed that sitting right in the main hall were the empress, the emperor and empress dowager, who were pulled along to preside over justice, as well as the legendary royal uncle, whose cultivation was in the 4th-degree realm. Besides that, imperial tutor was seated right in front of the emperor. Although he looked normal, but under Huang Yueli's vicious glare, she could tell that his complexion was still swollen. Obviously, the internal injuries within his body had yet to fully recover. And right in front of the imperial tutor was a stretcher where Crown Prince Li Moying laid. He was unable to sit up, but he used his pair of bloodshot eyes to stare viciously at Huang Yueli. Huang Yueli heard the Empress Dowager speaking out for her, so she turned around and gave her a curtsy. This old lady Empress Dowager, although she was soft-hearted, but in totality, she was considered as a good person. However, when the Empress heard what she said, her rage rose rapidly. Shuer is the princess of the Empress, and since the servants in your manor did not treat her well, she helped you by lecturing them. What was wrong with that? Moreover, it is your honor to have the princess visiting your manor. You only care about your own cultivation and left her aside. In your eyes, do you even have any respect for the royal family's prestige? The corners of Huang Yueli's lips moved coldly as she secretly laughed in her heart. This empress was already a grown woman, but she's still so naive to think that just based on the royal family's prestige, it was enough to make one bow and bend their knees. Wasn't she thinking way too much? In soaring heaven's continent, the only way to earn other people's respect was to use their own power. Huang Yueli blinked as she replied, Your Majesty, what you said is correct. Although seventh princess attacked the array that I had set up for my closed-door cultivation, almost causing my advancement to fail, but I didn't haggle with her on this. After my advancement was successful, I had even sent her away courteously. At least, when she left the valiant martial manor, she was still in one piece. But after she had left, I wouldn't know what happened during my absence. The Empress retaliated, in one piece? What are in one piece? What on earth did you do to Shuer, that she would appear in that manner at the palace gates? That manner? What manner? Huang Yueli asked innocently. With that bunch of guards, not wearing. Empress was so infuriated that the words blurted out from her mouth. Shut your mouth. Empress, What nonsense are you sprouting? Emperor gave a hard cough to stop her from talking. Empress suddenly realized that she had almost narrated that day's situation. Li Shue's affair was the biggest scandal in the royal family in these past few years, and if it were to leak out, she would be finished. So the emperor and empress had been hiding this matter from everyone, and even those golden-scaled guards whom had witnessed that day's situation had all been secretly put to death. Even the crown prince did not know that his own sister had such a scandal. Empress quickly used her hand to cover her mouth, not daring to say a single word more. However, Huang Yueli unforgivingly continued her questioning. Your Majesty, what happened to 7th Princess? Please tell me. I cannot be maligned by anyone for nothing. Since you said I had harmed the 7th Princess, then tell me what happened to her. Otherwise, won't I be made a scapegoat for nothing? Empress really wanted to point her finger at her nose and give her a good scolding, but yet she was unable to do so, just because Huang Yueli was right when she said the Empress did not say what had happened to the 7th Princess yet claim that she had harmed her. Wasn't this purely saying something without thinking? You can also listen on. Empress was left dumbfounded and unable to reply. At last she responded. When Shuer returned from the valiant martial manner, she was found to have both her arms broken and her face was burnt. As for her bodyguards, they had been beaten up and several of them had sustained severe injuries. You dare to say that this has nothing to do with you? Huang Yueli maintained her lost look. I really don't know. At that time, I was behind closed door cultivating for my advancement, and 7th Princess insisted on barging into the room. The result was that she hit against the profound energy that I had lost control over during my advancement. At that moment, she had indeed been pushed far away by the profound energy that was let loose, and she felt quite heavily too. But how can you blame this on me? Besides, after my advancement, 7th Princess immediately went back and I didn't even know she had broken her arms from the fall. When Empress Dowager heard these words, her expression turned darker. She had not known about the scandal between 7th Princess and the golden-scaled guards and had thought Li Shuer was beaten up in the valiant martial manner and mobilized her troops for a punitive expedition. Upon hearing the entire matter, she took Huang Yueli's side immediately. If what Leah said was true, then it would be Shuer's fault. To interrupt one when one was in the middle of advancement might lead to death. Shuer didn't manage to harm anyone, but her luck was bad enough to have met with the impact of the profound energy and cause her own injury. Instead of feeling remorse, you still have the guts to come and complain to me. When the Empress heard what the Empress Dowager said, she secretly gritted her teeth. The words that Empress Dowager had said was obviously blaming her for her lack of discipline. How could Empress Dowager be so biased? It was this wretch who had continuously humiliated her crown prince and 7th princess, and also beaten them to such a devastating manner. It was all that wretch's fault. Suddenly her eyes glimmered as she subconsciously found a flaw to Huang Yueli's answer. Your Highness, don't be cheated by Ruoli. How can you believe when she said she was in advancement? Who does know that at the Peach Blossom Banquet 1 month ago, Ruoli had just advanced to the Chi Profound Realm 9 stage? How much time had passed since then? And she's about to advance. Yet she still dared to claim that she had advanced successfully. Isn't that a blatant lie? Empress stared at Huang Yueli, hoping to see her shocked and helpless expression after she had been exposed. Unfortunately, Huang Yueli still maintained a composed expression except for a glint of ridicule flashing past her eyes. Your Majesty, do you think I'm lying? Isn't it obvious? You're just 14 years old and had already advanced to the 2nd degree realm? Even if you're a 6th grade talent, your cultivation speed can't be that heaven-defying. Do you really think everyone lack the power of judgment? You actually dare to just say out without considering the consequences. A frog in the well, this is also considered as heaven-defying? Huang Yueli snickered icily. In the huge sects, there were plenty of 14-year-old in the 2nd degree realm. What's more, they don't even require 6th grade talent. From a person in a small country at the border, it was no wonder that their knowledge was so short-sighted. And no wonder there were few outstanding experts within the country. Empress had believed that she was lying and kept pressing on. Stop your blatant lies. Since you're so awesome and you claim that you're not lying, then simple enough. Release your profound energy and let everyone take a look. If you don't dare to, woo. Before Empress could finish her words, she felt a powerful profound energy rushing towards her. Her chest became tight and her expression turned pale white immediately, unable to say a single word. She used her hand and pressed against her chest, unbelieving, looking straight in front of her. Huang Yueli had slightly unleashed the profound energy within her, but as she didn't want to expose her true power, she had only unleashed a power equivalent to the second-degree realm first-stage practitioner's profound energy. You can also listen on. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.